In nearly all cases with modern health systems, you're waiting months for appointments only to spend a mere 10 minutes with a doctor who quickly hands out a generic diagnosis that is likely rooted in a total misunderstanding of health and causes, and then you're offered a one-size-fits-all medication or invasive treatments with unpleasant side effects. If this sounds all too familiar, consider a different approach with the New Biology Clinic, founded by Dr. Tom Cowan, a respected natural health doctor, author, and speaker. Dr. Cowan's holistic perspective on health and wellness and a deep understanding of the true nature of health and disease sets this clinic apart. With the New Biology Clinic, it's not about quick fixes and suppressing symptoms. The practitioners take time to understand your unique story, recognizing that health is unique to the individual and that illnesses have a variety of causes, physically and metaphysically. Members of the New Biology Clinic enjoy a flat monthly fee that includes a range of valuable services like health consults as needed, practitioner-led live streams on diverse health topics, access to a members-only resource library, and multiple live group sessions every month. These sessions cover fitness, breathing integration, biofield tuning, guided meditation, EFT tapping, and much more. Unlike traditional healthcare systems that thrive on frequent visits, prescriptions, treatments, and suppressing symptoms, the New Biology Clinic's motivation is to make you healthy and keep you that way. Visit newbiologyclinic.com to learn more and use code THEWAYFORWARD for $50 off your account activation. If you're a member of The Way Forward, email hello@thewayforward.com to receive $150 off your account activation. Your journey to genuine healing begins here. Sarah Kleiner is board certified in applied quantum biology by the American Naturopathic Medical Board, has completed coaching certifications with the Quantum Biology Collective, is a certified nutrition coach with the National Academy of Sports Medicine, and recently completed the New Biology curriculum with Dr. Tom Cowan. Shout out to Dr. Tom Cowan. Sarah has over 14 years of experience working one-on-one with clients to optimize nutrition, lifestyle, and mindset. Her goal is to shift the paradigm when it comes to circadian rhythms, health, nutrition, and light, and help people integrate these principles into their lives in a modern world for optimal health regardless of their age or stage of life. And if you want to find out about Sarah and her courses, you can head to the show notes for that. Sarah, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We decided to coordinate our outfits, and this was totally on accident. Like, I was sharing with Sarah that I typically wear black or white, as you all know if you watch this show, rather than listening. And I chose blue today, and she got out of the Uber and she was wearing blue, and I was like, okay, we're matching. It's good.
And I typically wear black also. Like if you go on my podcast, like pretty much every episode, I'm in a black top.
I don't know what it is. Something in the air.
Yeah.
Beautiful Texas blue skies. Maybe it's chemtrail-less today. I don't know. Something. Okay, so you came highly recommended by so many people after I interviewed this lady named Kat James regarding leptin sensitivity. I had so many people message me saying, you need to interview Sarah Kleiner. You need to interview Sarah Kleiner, including my own wife. And I was like, okay. So then I started following you and I started watching some of your stuff. And I was like, wow, she really, really knows her stuff, especially as it relates to, and I share these sentiments too, the food is important, diet is important, but it is not the most important thing. And we've been severely misled on that. And I love your approach when it comes to getting into leptin sensitivity, in that it's not purely about diet. So I definitely want to talk about that today, but I also want to talk about light and everything else related to circadian rhythm and how we're addicted to adrenaline and cortisol and blue light addiction and things like this. But I think it's most appropriate to start with your story because this is sort of an experiential tale that has led you to this approach of health.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild life, how it leads you into different things through crisis. And it's like, wow, you sit back and think about it. You're like, okay, this is where we are. All right, I'm going with it. But I really got into alternative health. I don't really think I questioned the mainstream medical narrative at all until I had my daughter at 28, perfectly healthy, no issues. And she regressed directly after a medical procedure. We were in the hospital that night, and I was like, what's wrong with her? We were at the doctor this morning for a well visit. And they were like, oh, she's just having a bad reaction to these, medical procedures. And I said, she'll be fine. And I was like, okay, she'll be fine. But then she never talked again. We never got eye contact. My whole life basically fell apart at that point. And I just was 28 years old. I'm like, young mom, what the hell? Something is not right. And I started to just question everything about our healthcare system, nutrition, dove into vegan diet, quit my job to be full-time mom, had always worked in corporate, and started collecting nutrition certifications and doing nutrition work way back then, which was a little misguided, but you got to learn what you got to learn. And it kind of sent me on this alternative health pathway, long, windy road. And fast forward to about 2021, or 2020, actually, we decided we wanted to have another baby. And I was already doing nutrition work, heavily involved in the carnivore community, and I was all about food. It's all food. People they're eating too many anti-nutrients, and I just very much into the food community.
You were vegan though first, right?
I was vegan and a yoga teacher, wrecked my body. I have pictures of, I was so thin. My hair was super thin. Like, this is no hair extensions. This is just natural. But I'd always had thick hair, lost my hair, was super thin, cold all the time. But I wanted to be a good yoga teacher. Like, I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to be right for the animals. And one of my yoga teachers was like, this is not working for you. You're not going to be able to teach yoga anymore because you're injured all the time. You're sick all the time. You've got to eat meat. And so that was probably about 4 years into my yoga teaching career and nutrition career, that I was okay with eating meat, but I still stayed with a pretty plant heavy with a little bit of meat, and I really just struggled with a lot of inflammation. I was working out a lot. I did the typical thing, and I had a special needs child. My daughter is she's 17 this December, still very stressful. It's a lot. She still struggles with issues. And so I was just chronic low-lying inflammation all the time. Found carnivore diet in 2019 and did that, and it changed my life. And I was like, this is it. This is the holy grail. Carnivore is amazing. And started following Dr. Baker, got really involved in that community.
Were you strict carnivore?
Very strict.
Very only
Did not
meat?
cheat for 2 years.
Wow.
Nothing. I wouldn't do it. And, because
you felt great though when you were doing it at
really
first,
good.
right?
At first, I felt really good because I have, it's this long, windy, like I said, health history. Anxiety, depression, ADD, ADHD. I've lost 100 pounds 3 times. I'm just a hot mess, right? And so carnivore, it quieted that part of my brain that was always obsessed with food. It helped me with the crippling anxiety and depression. I didn't feel like I needed to be on medication. I had gotten myself off of, and I worked with a doctor to wean off, but I had at one time been on 8 different psychiatric meds.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And you didn't cut cold turkey though.
No.
Thank God.
Don't do that if you're listening.
Right.
You gotta
That's why I brought that up is I've witnessed that.
Oh, I tried it. I
horrible.
tried it. I almost had to be put away somewhere. It was very bad. Yeah. So I did get help to do that. But cutting out the sugar, the processed foods, doing carnivore was this is it. I want to help the world. This is amazing. I started a page as a joke on Instagram called The Carnivore Yogi because I had been teaching yoga for 12 plus years at that point. And I was a yoga teacher and I was eating nothing but meat. And I thought it was freaking hilarious. And the page kind of went viral. People are like, what on earth is this? This is the most polarizing thing I've ever seen.
Seemingly contradictory,
Right. And it caused...
Seemingly, and I say seemingly too, because I remember you shared that, I don't remember where I heard you say this, but your yoga teacher told you when we talk about needing to care for...
ahimsa.
Yeah.
That's what and I got attacked by so many vegans when I had that handle, and they're like, ahimsa, you're killing, it's non-harming, non-violence. And it was my yoga teacher that was like, ahimsa also means yourself. And so if you are sick, and that was how he got me to eat meat in the first place. If you're sick and you're falling apart, then you're not practicing the precepts appropriately. And I was like, okay. So I had to wrap my brain around it. But yeah, carnivore helped me immensely. Started kind of studying with them, getting more certifications and working with some of the doctors in that space and under them. And again, kind of got this following. And fast forward to 2020, we decided, okay, how old was I in 2020? 40? I turned 41. If I'm going to have a second baby, it's time. Like, there is a biological clock. I do have one. And we had always wanted a second baby, but my daughter was just hard. I mean, it's hard to have a nonverbal autistic child. There's so many things that you have to it's like you're always hypervigilant. And then, So we're like 2020, we've been home together. We've really like bonded as a family. It was really good for our family unit to be home and like disconnected from everything, not teaching in the yoga studio, my husband not working, but working from home. And it was just really good for our family. And so we were like, let's do it. Let's freaking do it. Let's have this baby. And I got pregnant right away. And so, and I'd always thought like you get pregnant and then like you're pregnant, like that's how it is. Lost that baby, devastated. But my doctors were like, well, you're 41. So chances of getting pregnant over 40, it's harder. It is
sure. I'm sure that it's harder to some degree, but I don't, but I know a friend of mine, Ayla Cuenca, and Ayla, if you listen to this, please correct me. Ayla has said she knows of people who have been pregnant in their 60s.
Yeah. Yes. When you look at the part of my long and windy road to get pregnant was studying deuterium and talking with Victor over at Lightwater. And he was the one who told me about the women in these communities, but they were drinking all this deuterium depleted water, getting pregnant in their 60s. Yeah. Like that. I'm like, really? Okay. So yeah, in today's society, fertility is a huge issue. I had no idea it was such a big issue. I kind of would hear little bits and pieces about it, but I was in my bubble. I'm like, carnivore diet, take care of my daughter, like mostly take care of my daughter. Like I don't have, this is not in my energy field. But then got pregnant again because my doctor's like, you'll be fine. You'll just get pregnant. The next one will be fine. Got pregnant again and lost that one. And then I was like, okay, something's not right. And I was just devastated, like to see a woman like go through miscarriage, you see it and you're like, oh, that sucks. But then when you go through it, you're just like, man, this sucks. It's really hard. And I got impulsive. I got impatient. Some of my old thinking popped in, like, I got to just do IVF, and my doctors were telling me, IVF is going to give you a better chance of having a baby and we can test the embryos, which that's a whole other conversation. If there's a genetic abnormality, then we won't have that baby, right? We'll find the genetically healthy embryos because these are genetically unhealthy that you're having, which by the way, they weren't.
Right.
I did have the first miscarriage, I don't know, we didn't test it, but the second one I did have it sent away for testing. And I was already starting IVF when they called me and said, this one actually wasn't genetically abnormal. We can't really tell you why you miscarried, but now you're doing IVF, so you're gonna be fine. So I was undergoing that whole process. And I told my husband, I'm like, if we get 5 eggs, we're having all of them. I don't care. If we have 5 embryos, like that was kind of how I came to, because there's a whole moral thing around the whole IVF thing as well, that there was just so much emotion involved and like really wanting this baby that I was like, okay, if I get 5 embryos, we're having all of them. I'll just have one after another, But it didn't work. I got no viable embryos after 2 rounds of IVF. And I was, again, devastated. And at the same time, I'm running a podcast. I'm doing the carnivore diet. I've got probably 40,000 followers or so, YouTube channel talking about how great the carnivore diet is. But I can't get pregnant and just went through IVF. And someone who was following me at the time reached out and said, hey, would you like to interview Dr. Jack Cruz? I'm like, oh, he's the crazy light person, like whatever. Sure, why not? That could be interesting. So I had Jack on, and this was the only interaction I've ever had with Jack. So it's just the one conversation. I didn't go study with him or anything like that. It's just one conversation I had with him, but it was very impactful. And he essentially said, you need to learn about leptin, and you need to learn about light, and basically quit all this food shit that you're doing. Quit being so obsessed with food and focus here. And again, That was the only interaction conversation I've ever had with Jack. I took that information and I said, well, what do I have to lose? I go look at sunrise every morning, and I start studying circadian biology, look at some of Sachin Panda's work. And there's so much interesting stuff out there. Dr. Gerald Pollack and structured water. You get into this whole world. And I was like, what have I got to lose? I'm doing it. I'm just doing it. Also connected with a guy named Dr. Corey Gasvini. And he and I became friends, and he kind of just told me, like, here's what you do. He gave me protocols, and it was all very in line with circadian biology, quantum biology, and leptin. So I did all these things. Got to be October. He's like, all right, it's time to start cold plunging. I was like, you're crazy. Like, I'm not doing that. He's like, but you're an H2 haplotype. So you're a northern haplotype. This is actually going to help your mitochondria to generate heat. It's going to improve your egg quality. Just do it. Did it. Got pregnant in January with my son.
Wow.
That following January, after multiple miscarriages, 2 failed rounds of IVF, and gave birth to my son at age 43. And it was wonderful. Yeah. Had my dream. He was here like 45 minutes. That labor was so fast.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And he's just like, he's almost 22 months now, and wonderful. And now I know autism's not genetic. Completely different experience. Right. Sad. A lot of it is sad to think of a lot of this stuff I'm having with my son now that I missed out with on my daughter, but really wonderful.
Right.
And I'm grateful because the whole experience since I started this stuff back in 2021 really made me dive into quantum biology, change my views on nutrition, and change the way I was working with people as well. Because while I was doing carnivore, it helped me with the mental issue, the depression, the anxiety. It helps me with IBS. I was having looked pregnant all the time. So teaching yoga and just looked pregnant, getting eczema on my fingers, couldn't wear my wedding ring. Just all kinds of stuff that carnivore made go away, but started struggling a little bit with thyroid, struggling a little bit with adrenals, and, gaining weight. I had put on like 20 pounds, and it didn't seem like it made sense. I'm just eating meat. I'm not going to Dairy Queen and
right.
eating ice cream. Why am I gaining weight? And so I had my own thing. And by the way, before I got pregnant, I actually lost 30 pounds, without trying to lose weight, because you don't want to try to lose weight when you're getting pregnant. But
right.
I had optimized things in such a way that I lost 30 pounds and then got pregnant. But yeah, I had all these clients coming to me with carnivore as well that were like, this is better, this is better, this is better, this is not better. What do I do? So I started implementing in 2021 with a lot of those clients circadian biology, these really simple principles, changing the way that they were eating to be more local and seasonal. And the women that did want to implement fasting, we started skipping the dinner instead of the breakfast. That's a huge one. Just doing a few really basic things. And I started having ridiculously amazing results with clients all over the world. So I knew it wasn't just me. It wasn't just some one-off.
Validating for you then too.
It was cool. And it was really exciting because I was so tired of I've been doing just nutrition for so long. I'm like, wait a minute. What if this was so much more impactful than anybody understood for our hormones, for our weight, for our longevity, for all of it? And everyone's over here fighting over vegan versus carnivore versus paleo versus cutting each other's throats over this stupid crap. And I'm like, but you're all it's a whole mess, know?
Right.
So it's really exciting. So that's kind of what got me here today. I have some courses on leptin and had almost 4,000 people do my 21-day leptin program. And I continue to update it as I get feedback from people. And yeah, there are a lot of 21-day leptin reset babies out there.
Amazing.
There's a woman in my group right now who's 47 and she's pregnant. And they did the anatomy scan. They decided to do that testing. I totally support that. And the baby's fantastic, doing healthy. And so it's really exciting.
That's
it's
so
really
cool.
exciting. Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow. You named so many things there, and that's what I want to get into for this conversation. Circadian biology and light and all the things that you had mentioned. I want to start with this though. In general, why do you think so many men and women are struggling with fertility issues?
I mean,
No, that's a big topic. That could be an episode in and of itself.
I was thinking about
as someone who did, and you were doing all the right things.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I was at. I was like low tox, just get all the chemicals, all the things out,
Right.
Diet super clean, no glyphosate, like all of it. I spent, we pulled money out of retirement on our fertility journey, about $100,000 we pulled out of retirement, which I do not recommend that you do that, to do functional medicine testing, gut testing, blood testing galore. And
what do you think about tests in general?
You know what? Like, don't do it I have so many feelings on testing.
I know, same.
I wish I could have my money back. But you know what? It's gone as a sunk cost. But I don't see it on the whole being something people need to run to figure out what they need to do.
Totally agree.
I think like we need to do the basics, implement some really basic things. And then if you're still really struggling in 60 to 90 days, maybe we will do some blood work. Right. But a lot of the functional,
or like a hair analysis or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, maybe a hair analysis, and those are interesting as well. Like there's flaws in every set of tests, and I just finished my board exam with the American Naturopathic Board, passed in applied quantum biology. The more I study quantum biology, and you're going to have Carrie, my partner, on the podcast as well.
Stoked for that.
I love Carrie. She's just such a wonderful person, and she can just speak brilliantly about the body as this like electrical being, and that we have these things that happen in the body, like on this, like how do tumors dissolve? How do we explain the unexplainable? It's not explained by biochemistry. And I'm not going to sit here and say biochemistry is shit and throw it out the window and don't utilize it ever, and it has no help or basis, but there's so many holes in that model.
Too much importance applied to that, and I would say to our physicality itself, right? Like there's the metaphysical pieces of what we are, and the metaphysical things that impact us are far greater than we've been led to believe, even much of the holistic health community. But I'll say my thoughts on testing, and you tell me if you agree or disagree. I think that it is looking at a snapshot in time of something that is subject to change literally 12 hours later, and then you're making drastic health decisions based on that, typically rooted in supplementation, just adding more instead of getting back to very basic things and taking things away.
I mean, I think there are some good functional practitioners out there, so I don't want to offend anyone or put anyone down, but I feel like on the whole, functional medicine is lipstick on a pig of allopathic medicine. And I've been burned. We got burned with my daughter more recently. That's a whole other story, but like you get desperate, and that's where people are today with their health, is they're really desperate. The messages and emails that come through my inbox of people who are really, really sick and can't get out of bed. It's astounding the kind of health issues that people have, and to go make them get blood work or dried urine. A lot of the time we're looking at things, we're subtracting the water. Water is everything. And again, Carrie, I know, is going to talk more about that. But if we don't understand how water operates in the body, it changes everything. I know you've had Veda on the show, and I've done I've had I do water experiments. My whole kitchen is like a water lab. Like I'll do freezing experiments and testing different things. And once you see that, it's like, how can you think about health through this? Like your blood test says this, take that. this is high, let's push it down with that. Because it doesn't even work that way. Like even with you start talking about HRT, like someone could take something like DHEA and it could aromatize into estrogen. You take vitamin D, it can cause, you should have Jim Stevenson Jr. on the show sometime. It can cause other issues. It can block the thyroid receptor. Right. Like we think we know so much. And yes, we can save lives through some of this. Like if someone's like dying, well, that's up for debate too, but
you're so speaking my language on all this though. Like I'm over here just nodding my head like, yes.
Oh God, don't get me started. But I mean, I still think there can be a place for it, but the more and more I'm in this model, in this world and working with people and having these experiences and seeing people heal, the more I'm like, oh gosh, y'all are just spinning your wheels over there and it's not serving anybody. Right. And that's what I ultimately want is for people to be able to take the power back for themselves,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with fertility, it's like, we did all the testing, we did the clean stuff. And I think a lot of people do that because fertility is a huge issue. When I was in the IVF clinic, I was expecting to see women my age and there were a couple. But the waiting room was full of women in their 20s and women in their early 30s.
Wow.
I mean, it's insane. Like, and it's not a guarantee. It doesn't work. You can spend all this money and then it doesn't even work, But I think it's a disrupted body clock, not to oversimplify it, because that's going to impact everything downstream. Every single cell and organ system in your body has a clock in front of it. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to function at a specific time of day. And, having disrupted circadian rhythms and a disrupted light clock can dysregulate your nervous system, can cause you to be a poor metabolizer of certain foods and mess with your gut health. And how much of the gut issues people have are the fact that they are blasting their bodies with blue light. Your gut lining can't repair if you don't make enough melatonin at night. And it sounds oversimplified, but I've literally had like thousands of people do this stuff. And they're like, wait a minute, I didn't need 15 supplements for my gut. I needed to stop staying up watching TV and eating dinner at 11 o'clock at night. I'm like,
So simple.
Yeah.
It almost sounds so simple that it's like it can't be this. It cannot be this simple.
And it's so hard for people to wrap their brains around. Like I did a little article. I do a free newsletter. Did a little article last night about glasses and contacts and just try to help people understand the mechanism of light coming into the eye, how it communicates with the brain to prepare the skin, and how all these neuropeptides and neurohormones, they happen because of light coming in through the eye. And
that's why I hate so much that I wear contacts. I'm like trying to
get some dailies.
Okay.
That's a good brand. Yeah. I had that in the newsletter because that's a big FAQ because it doesn't block out UV.
Yeah.
So you can still get UV.
And the place that I went to get contacts was trying so hard to push UV light. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And they tell you they're putting blue blockers in it, and it's not real blue blockers. And plus, you don't want to always block blue light.
Right, exactly.
All day
it's
long.
Not that blue light is always bad. Right. It's just that overexposure to just blue light itself is bad.
Right. And so, it can dysregulate your hormones big time. And it sounds, again, overly simplistic, but this newsletter I sent out last night thinking I was going to clear up confusion. Woke up to questions in my private community this morning. So do I need to wear sunglasses at the beach? I'm like, use discretion. Be intuitive. Like we have just disconnected ourselves from this ability to be intuitive. We want to be told what to do all the time. And I'm like, think about it. Like, just think about how this works in nature, And we have a modern world, modern life, and a lot of things that disrupt that. So we have to be more creative and engineer things a certain way. But when you try to explain this stuff to people, eyes glaze over and they're like, so what do you mean by eating local and seasonal? I'm like, well, if the food grows in the area that you live, then it's probably okay for you to eat it. Like rather than buying something that was grown in Mexico and eating that in the middle of January.
Living in Montana, eating a coconut, probably
Yeah.
It's okay occasionally, but probably not the best to do that regularly.
And now I'm like, oh, when I was teaching yoga and doing all these like juice cleanses, I would lead these like we're going to do a 7-day smoothie detox for New Year's. Oh my gosh. No wonder everybody felt like complete garbage, because you're not supposed to be eating bananas and like blended up fruit in the middle of January, right. So it's very intuitive and it's very simple, but you have to undo a lot of the programming around food, and you have to tune out a lot of the noise as well.
So I want to get to circadian biology and everything related to light. No, we touched on that a little bit just now, but I want to first start with leptin sensitivity. And for those who did not listen to my episode with Kat James, I'm just going to have Sarah reiterate and probably expand upon everything that Kat said during that episode. So what is leptin sensitivity?
Essentially, it just means it's kind of like insulin sensitivity. I mean, it just means that you can rely upon the signaling between the stored energy on your body and your brain. You can rely on your hunger signals. It's kind of like the thermostat, the energy of your body is regulated. I call it, it's one of the energy management systems of the body. And
okay, so, that's what leptin is?
Yeah, it's a hormone. Okay. It's a master circadian signaling hormone. So I look at 3 hormones that are important: leptin, cortisol, and melatonin. And they all go on a circadian rhythm. So melatonin and leptin are supposed to peak around the same time, between 12 and 2 in the morning. And leptin is supposed to dock to the brain and give a report and say, this is how much stored energy we have in the form of body fat, stored energy in the liver. So tomorrow, it's safe enough to make a baby. Thyroid do this, sex hormones do this. So it kind of sends out signals to the rest of the body. It regulates, or it signals the glucose insulin axis. So it's really this master hormone that gives directions to a lot of other downstream hormones.
That's what Kat called it too. She called it the master hormone as well.
Yeah.
So why is it important then? I feel like this is a rhetorical question, but I just want you to expand upon it, to become leptin sensitive.
Yeah, I mean, because there's so many things that are correlated with leptin resistance. One of them is infertility. You want optimal hormones. You want, even if you don't want to have a baby necessarily, you still want to have good hormone functioning. You want optimal thyroid. You want your metabolism to be optimized. And if your thyroid's not getting the signal from your brain that it's safe and there's enough energy on board, or how much energy do we even have, you're going to run into a lot of other issues. And thyroid issues are rampant these days. I mean, I feel like everyone has thyroid issues. And just because you have a thyroid issue doesn't necessarily mean there's a direct issue with your thyroid gland. There's some sort of a signaling issue and a conversion issue that's not necessarily happening for people. And so you can get in the weeds on thyroid stuff. And I did for a little bit too, because my thyroid was a little bit low on carnivore. And so I started taking thyroid medication, and that was a trip. I thought I was having anxiety attacks, panic attacks. God. Even on the lowest dose. And so
was it like an herbal supplement?
No, it was thyroid. It was
actual medication.
Yeah, compounded medication. And my body was like, "What are you doing? Like, this is not what we need. This is not what we need." And thankfully, I found the things about leptin and circadian biology and was able to course correct. But I couldn't tolerate the medication. I see a lot of people having that issue, or they take the medication and it doesn't help, like because you don't have a deficiency there's some sort of a signaling issue.
That's so interesting. I've never heard it framed like that. It makes a lot of sense though. It's not necessarily that you have an actual thyroid issue. It's the signaling of the hormones that impact the thyroid. Wow. And
there are people that have issues with the thyroid gland. I don't want to say that doesn't exist, but a lot of issues are coming down to signaling, and I'm sure Carrie will get into receptor sites being hydrated and
Thank you for knowing exactly what Carrie will cover, so I don't have to overlap.
I'm giving you some talking points.
That's great. Thank you. Just review this one before the episode with Carrie. That's good.
But exclusion zone water in the body is crucial. I've
done so many episodes on water, so I'm stoked for that
it's
one.
Crucial
I know you're super
leptin.
knowledgeable on that though too. So
I love it.
Don't sell yourself short.
I love talking about it. Yeah,
me too.
Yeah.
Are you a water sign?
A what?
Are you a water sign?
No, I'm married to a water sign though.
I have 2 water signs.
Oh, so really?
I'm like obsessed, and I'm very emotional according to my wife.
My husband's a Pisces, so yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he 10 years ago. Remember you said that? No. I'm a Gemini. I don't remember. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry.
That's awesome. You and I would probably get along, so that's good.
Probably.
So with Kat James, I talked about leptin sensitivity, and it was very, very, very focused on diet. And I know you do consider diet to be a piece of it, but again, I think you and I share these same sentiments that in general, whether we're talking about leptin sensitivity or holistic health, there is so much focus on diet and not a lot of focus on these other things. But since we're talking about leptin sensitivity and diet is a part of it, what are the sort of diet, very generally speaking, do's and don'ts as it relates to leptin sensitivity?
Yeah, I mean, so leptin resistance is a precursor to insulin resistance and even prediabetes. So
we see a lot of people with type 2 and type 3 diabetes nowadays too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's in children, it's ridiculous. And so leptin resistance happens first as a precursor before you even get to these conditions. And the fact that we have, like 93% of people are metabolically unhealthy at this point.
Insane.
And they fit the criteria. Some of your labs may not even show that you're in that 93%. So you may be dealing with some leptin resistance. But, on the whole, it's similar to insulin resistance that we want to give the body proper signaling to kind of tamper things down. We want to calm down brain inflammation because the leptin receptor and the insulin receptor sit next to each other in the brain. And if the brain has a lot of inflammation, then that signaling process is going to have a really hard time taking place as well. And so we try to remove, and it doesn't have to be permanent, but we kind of have to get the body to quiet down a little bit and then just really push in hard with the signaling. That's where light comes in. That's why light is so crucial. And it's like, if you just go at this from diet, you can probably have some results. You can probably get somewhere.
So maybe we should talk about light first and then diet. I love that answer though, because you always go back to light and circadian biology first. Okay. Yeah. So let's go there first. Let's define circadian biology before we continue.
Yeah. I mean, your body runs on this 24-hour-ish circadian rhythm. And again, like, hormones, cortisol, leptin, and melatonin are the master hormones. Cortisol and melatonin, it's very important that those patterns are balanced as well. So in the morning when you wake up, you want cortisol to start gradually rising, goes up, and then throughout the day, it should eventually go down so that at night we can start making melatonin, which is a master antioxidant, which is crucial for the mitochondria. It's crucial for mitochondria, we call them the powerhouse of the cell. It is really kind of the energy management system of the body. So when you're just doing diet, you may do a ketogenic diet. You can do a little bit of mitochondrial work with diet, but light, optimizing melatonin production, exclusion zone water production, all of that stuff is crucial for leptin resistance because it's the energy management system of the body. It's how efficient is this signaling going to be? And so we really want to work to optimize cortisol, melatonin patterns through light and darkness. And so most people are very blue light toxic. You tell them to go outside in the morning and look at the sun, and they're like, why? That was me. Like, why the hell would I do that? Like, that's so dumb. Go look at the sun.
Or even like people, because I still struggle with this sometimes too. And I've literally taught a course on the importance of like even sun gazing when early in the morning and late at night, or just exposing your skin to the sun. Even then, it's like I still struggle to realize how impactful that is.
Oh, it's huge. Right. It's huge. Right. And then the darkness at night. So blue blockers are non-negotiable, and I have finally, after like 4 years, my husband's like, okay, I can't see anything in my house at night. Like, it's just, this is how it is. Like, I'm used to it now. If I turn on the overhead light, she's going to get really mad. So I'm not going to do that. Like, my house is very like.
Do you have any of the red bulbs in certain spots and like certain lights that turn on?
I have panels that I'll put on the floor. And then I have little red night lights that if you walk by them, they turn on, or you walk in the bathroom, they turn on. So that's you can see. Yeah. We just try to keep the house dim, because it helps the kids too. Screen time, TV time off. But if your body is not, melatonin is also a reproductive hormone. So if you're not making enough melatonin, that's a big problem for your fertility as well. And we make subcellular melatonin during the day as well in response to infrared light. And what are most people doing? They're staying indoors where it's too dim all day long and they're not exposed to any infrared. And then at night, they're watching TV, they've got their phone in their face. So everyone's melatonin production's in the toilet.
Mm-hmm.
Cortisol patterns are all over the place because the body makes cortisol in response to blue light. And, that's not always a bad thing. That's blue light begins to come on the horizon at sunrise, but it's in a very specific small amount. So we have this just soft, gradual rise to waking up and being outside and getting all that red and infrared that's in sunrise as well. It's very healing and very gentle on the body. And then UV comes online. We've got all these neuropeptides, neurohormones that actually can help you to regulate your appetite via POMC production. And so that's also a crucial time period that we need for leptin signaling that most people they're going throughout their day and they're at work and they're doing, and I work with people. And so there are ways to support this. Even if you have kids, you have a job, you got to be indoors. Like there's things we can do. You don't have to be out there for hours a day. Now I, try to go out there as long as I can.
So are you out there first thing in the morning typically?
Every morning me and the dog are in the backyard doing some grounding and I'll just sit on the ground and hang out, bring my hydrogen water out there, drink my water, my minerals, and everyone's still sleeping. I'll go in, start making breakfast, and then I'll go sit out on the patio and eat breakfast, and everyone kind of comes downstairs. That's my perfect morning.
Are you up before the sunrise or?
Usually I wake up like right with it, unless
cool.
one of the kids has a bad night, because I do have a 21-month-old, so.
I get that. And sleep is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. And my daughter will occasionally have bad nights as well. Mm-hmm. But, so it's not like I'm perfect 365 days a year. When I was pregnant and I didn't feel good the first trimester, it was like me sitting like outside for like 2 minutes with a blanket, like I'm going to not throw up in my front yard and then going back inside, But it was enough to give my body the signal, right? And I didn't go turn on the TV and all the overhead lights. I just kind of like rested. But yeah, the light signals that we're sending our bodies and our mitochondria are sensors as well for the environment. I think this is a huge issue for fertility and health, period, for cancer, all of this stuff, because melatonin is a master antioxidant, and cancer rates are skyrocketing as well. And I think that plays, along with the loss of exclusion zone water in the body, the lack of melatonin production is also a major issue as well.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on supplements and specifically vitamin D supplements. And I'll preface this by saying by the time this episode comes out, we'll have been well past another episode I did with Dr. Garrett Smith, who is...
is he the vitamin A guy?
Yeah, he's thoroughly convinced that all I won't say all, I don't want to speak for him, but many of the vitamins, and especially vitamin supplements, are bad. And vitamin D is one of the ones that he sounds alarm on being a very, very bad supplement to take. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on vitamin D supplementation.
I'm going to have to listen to that episode, by the way, because I only know him for the vitamin A stuff, which I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
Curious.
Interesting.
But I haven't heard his take on vitamin D. But Jim Stevenson Jr. has been on my show, and really nice guy. He has a PhD, and he's like the guy that like gets a hold of something and then he just kind of like won't let it go. Like he's done so much research on this topic, more than anyone that I've ever talked to, because his wife was told when she had, I think it was breast cancer, to do high dose vitamin D because she was very, very low in vitamin D, and I think it almost killed her.
Wow.
And that's when he was like, oh, hell no. It becomes personal.
Yeah.
It becomes personal, like me with the fertility stuff and then the stuff with my daughter. It's like, this is personal now. And so I don't think, like I said earlier, you put something into the body and it's a hormone. People don't really understand.
Right.
Like melatonin's a hormone. Vitamin D is a hormone, and we're only measuring 25D. We're not measuring 125. There are several.
Vitamin D3 is also rat poison too.
Yes, I've heard that from Jim. Yeah, there's so many. You can go get a vitamin D panel, and I think measure several different vitamin D metabolites. And so we don't know everything about it.
Right.
And to say that someone needs to be at certain level of vitamin D. I also disagree with that too. And there's people in the quantum circadian world that might like question what I'm saying. But if you're a H2 haplotype, right? Like you're from Northern Europe, that's your mother's mitochondrial DNA. Work of Dr. Doug Wallace really talks more about this. Do you need to be out in UVI of 12 for 3 hours a day? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
Like your mitochondria probably don't need that amount of sun. Not to say I'm outside as much as I can,
right.
But in direct sun, I'm a Fitzpatrick 1 maybe. I'm probably maybe a 2 now. I've got a tan. I never had a tan my whole life, but I do have a tan and I do lay in the sun. But it's not for hours a day. Because I don't think we need that in order to be healthy. Yeah.
This is the problem though too, is that so many people look at sunlight as, sunlight equals more vitamin D, when it's so much more than about vitamin D synthesis in the body in the first place.
Yeah.
And even if you are concerned with your vitamin D levels, which I sort of question why you're even getting your vitamin D levels checked rather than looking at something else,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Just the general state of your health. But if you are doing that, the way to fix that is not by supplementing with synthetic vitamin D. In my mind, it's by exposing yourself to the sun. And if not the sun, there are some other solutions that I know you present as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we know like this much about the human body. And that's the thing I keep learning more and more and more and studying more and more and more. And like whenever I'm writing a newsletter, an article, I'm like deep into the research, looking at it, dissecting it. I'm like, and then we just know like that much. And then you talk to somebody like Jim, who's done even more research. We don't know.
Right.
And that's one thing I don't recommend supplement. It is a hormone, right? Mm-hmm. And we don't know what it's doing in the body.
Right.
So, and nothing I say is medical advice or meant to be taken as such. I don't want anyone to say, I listened to Sarah on a podcast and I did this. And now, you know how it goes. I know you have your own disclaimers, but just for me personally and for my children, no.
Mm-hmm.
My husband, no. I'm like, no, we don't need that.
Right.
We're going outside. Yeah, we don't need that.
What about the people who are just fearful of the sun in general, which like I almost want to laugh even asking that question, because it's insane to be fearful of the thing that helps us be alive.
Yeah.
That's the way that I look at the sun. But there is something that you refer to that I've never heard of this phrase before, like forming what's called a sun callous.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to me about that and just about being fearful of the sun in general?
Yeah. And that's definitely a Jack Kruse term. He definitely has talked about that a lot over the years, just to give him credit for that. We can't just go out in the sun. We can't. So what are we in almost August? If someone who's not used to going in the sun, Fitzpatrick skin type 1, decides, I'm going to listen to this podcast and I'm going to start laying out in the sun, I'm going to start getting more sun exposure, probably not a good idea. You want to start building up your tolerance to sun, and you don't need hours a day in the spring when the UV index starts to rise, because UV index in the spring is probably like 4, 5. By the time it gets to summer, it's higher and higher and higher. We need less time in that strong sunlight, but you want to slowly allow that to build up. And the light coming in through your eyes informs your brain, which also communicates with your skin, where we make melanin, histidine, urocanic acid, all this stuff that actually serves as like a filter, as some endogenous sun protection. The other thing about the sun is that most people have a really crappy circadian rhythm, so they're not making enough melatonin, which has antioxidant protection from strong UV. And they're not going out in the morning sunlight, which is really rich in red and near infrared. So you can precondition your eyes and skin and have this gradual hormone rise from doing this naturally, and then go out in that stronger UVB. But what most people do is they pop on the sunglasses, they go to the beach in the middle of June, and they get burned to death. Now, the sun is dangerous and it's toxic, and look what it did to me. I'm sick, and this is horrible, and it causes cancer. Well, you're kind of being a dumbass about the sun. Like, I didn't know any better until I learned all this stuff. So not to talk down to anybody, but like, you want to start doing this in the beginning of the spring. And I mean, I do it in the winter too, because I live in Georgia. So I'll sunbathe in the middle of December if the weather's not too cold. And we still have vitamin D and UVB in the middle of December. But you want to do it gradually. And again, D-Minder app is really helpful to gauge your time in the sun. It has a little timer on it. Say it's time to turn over or get out of the sun or seek shade, and listen to that. Don't override the timer.
That's called D-Minder?
D-Minder. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm working on an app right now too, by the way.
Okay,
that's
cool.
going to pull all of this together in there. It's not quite ready yet, but
amazing.
Yeah.
So for you, you said that you're getting up typically right near the sunrise, but is it a big deal to wake up before sunrise? Is that okay, or would you not recommend that?
I mean, we all have lives,
Right.
jobs and responsibilities.
I'm saying if you are able to.
If
what is the ideal, let's say?
If I had well, and it depends on where you live too.
Right.
Because when I started talking about this stuff in 2021, all the people that live in Norway and Sweden where the sun doesn't even set in the summer for a couple of days start coming out of the woodwork. They're like, well, what am I supposed to do? I can't go out for sunrise.
What do you recommend
sunrise
with them,
is at
honestly?
3 a.m. You're crazy. I'm not doing that.
Right. Well, if you're talking about their circadian biology being set to their terrain, they're exposed to sunlight for much longer. So what do you do in a situation
Yeah,
like
you got to do some biohacking, I guess. I don't know. I hate that word, but
thank you. I don't like that word either.
I really don't like that word.
Either. The body's not something to be hacked.
You look at the correlation of, and no disrespect to anybody who lives in any of these regions, but the issues with suicide and mental disorders. One of my friends, Dr. Pugh, love her to death. She's stayed with me for probably the last 6 months out of 12. She's been kind of living at my house, but she'll be like, "Oh, the mad Swede woman." She cracks me up. She's like, "I got a mad Swede in my emails."
Are you Scandinavian?
No.
What are you?
I'm Irish. I'm a melting pot.
Okay, got it.
I don't even I know I'm an H2, which is somewhere up there in Northern Europe, but yeah, my parents were farm people that lived in North Carolina, and
the only reason I ask is because hair, skin color, everything like that.
I look the part. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but it's that part of the world is you got to really buy blackout curtains, blue blockers, and I recommend, because I actually finally, after 2 years of people blasting my email inbox doing my 21-day leptin program, they're like, "Okay, this is great, but how do I do this?" Consistent sleep-wake time. We want to wake up a little earlier in the summer and sleep a little longer in the winter. So you got to decide how that works for you. In the morning, we can eat. Food is a Zeitgeber. So in the winter time, if people, let's say the sun comes up, just for a reasonable person, sun comes up 8 o'clock in the morning in the winter time for some of these more, northern latitudes. I'm on the 33rd latitude in Georgia, which is awesome because it doesn't get too extreme. But if the sun's not coming up till 8 in the morning, and you got to be at work at 7:30, I'm going to say, eat some breakfast, stabilize your blood sugar with protein and fat. Let's get that signaling, because food's a Zeitgeber. It's a secondary circadian signal. And maybe if you want to dip your face in some ice water, do a little cold on your face, that can help the body temperature to start naturally rising. Do things like that. If you want to do a little bit of red light therapy, cool. Wear blue blockers, keep it low key, eat the breakfast. Let's keep it as low key as we can. Then when you do get to work, wear your yellow blue blockers driving. If it's still dark when you're driving, don't drive with red or orange. That is very dangerous. I fell down the stairs pregnant in my red blue blockers. My husband was like, "The circadian stuff is over. We're done with this."
You trying to change your whole house after that?
He's like, "I'm done with these light bulbs. I'm done with these stupid glasses," because I was really pregnant.
You were okay?
I was fine.
Okay.
I was fine. Everything was fine, but it scared the life out of him.
Yeah.
He was like, "This is stupid."
The red ones are dark. I've raw optics, the red ones and the yellow ones, and I only wear the red ones at certain times.
Yeah, I'm like, put your reds on when you're settled.
Yeah.
You don't have to go up and down stairs. You're settled. Yeah. Yellow, typically, if you're walking around, driving. So if you had to go to work, then I'd wear the yellow. And then, if the sun's coming up while you're driving, open a window, open your sunroof. When you get to work, if you can step out for a light break, that's going to be really, really helpful, just to get that proper amount of blue in your eyes and get the red and near infrared, get that signaling on board and do your best. If that's 30 seconds, it's 30 seconds. If I know Carrie has 3 kids, so a lot of days she's sunroof, windows down, and she's in Michigan where it's really, really cold. And she makes this work even there, which is basically Canada. So it's possible. It's very possible to do it, but you do have to be more, you have to engineer things a little bit differently.
Right.
Yeah.
So ideally, again, it's important to wake up as close to sunrise as you can, sleep a little bit longer in the wintertime, and expose yourself to sunlight first thing in the morning if you can. And I don't know. I don't know if it's like this is my very military mindset conditioning that I still have, but even if you're in a place where it's a little bit cold, I still think it's important to just go outside.
Therapy. Yeah. And you're gradually doing it. So in Georgia, it'll get down to 32, 30 degrees, sometimes in the 20s, but it doesn't typically happen overnight. Typically, it's been getting a little chillier every morning, and I'm cold adapting every morning by kind of just gradually going out there, doing a little bit of grounding, pulling in that free energy, and my body is used to it. So when it is 32 degrees, I can sit out there. And I was like always cold, always, yelling at my husband that the heat wasn't on high enough, or in the summer the AC's up too high, and now I'm like, it's hot in here. Yeah.
So I know a lot of people will say that if you live in a place where it's really, really cold and you don't want to wake up with the sunrise and go outside when there's like frost on the ground, things like this, which I understand that you can sort of mimic the sun by doing infrared or red light therapy. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that and just the general do's and don'ts of red light therapy.
Well, it's missing blue, because blue is a signal that tells your body to start making cortisol. So you could just continue making melatonin and feel kind of drowsy and like, why am I dragging today? I love red light therapy. Actually, it was one of the things I used to, I believe, enhance my fertility. That's how I got into red light therapy, as I read a study that showed women who were over 40 had been through failed IVF, and the women that used the red light therapy were able to get pregnant and have live, healthy babies. And it was a pretty good rate of people that were doing it. And I was like, buying a panel immediately, like overnight shipping. And that was part of what I think did help to help me get pregnant, among all the other things that I was doing as well. But I love red light therapy. It's just not going to give you the appropriate circadian signaling. And then on the flip side of that, you'll see people online that their whole house is lit up red at night. Mine does that occasionally. I try to avoid turning on the big ones and then turning on all, the really bright lights, because brightness can disrupt melatonin as well. Again,
so it's more like subtle, ambient, like background. That's why you mentioned the floor ones that you
put
have,
it on
right?
the floor, because where's the sun? Comes up from the floor, sets down from the earth. Right. So I'll set one of the smaller panels that's not super bright on the floor and use that to walk around the house. And we go to bed early we go to bed so early in the winter. Like, it's just that's how the kids are. And I always thought like my daughter was just like a horrible sleeper. Turns out if you change the lighting in your house and you take screens and TV away, everyone's tired at 7:30 at night in the winter, and eat an early dinner. Everyone wants to go to bed.
So how do you approach red light therapy now, knowing what you know about circadian biology?
I just do it when the sun is up.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we have red and near infrared all day long. We actually have it before sunrise and after sunset, when it's kind of the, daybreak. That's a lot of red and near infrared. And then nightfall after sunset, that's a lot of red and near infrared. So it's a really good time to get that naturally as well. But if I'm going to do red light therapy, which I do, I actually did some this morning, I try to do it when the sun's up.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've been sitting in my sauna space in the morning. I should probably not do that. Do it later in the day, because it has the infrared and red light therapy.
Have you ever talked to Dr. Mike Belkowski? Okay. He's Mr. Red Light. I love Mike. And he had a doctor on his show I listened to recently. There's like 10,000 studies on red light therapy. So there's like a ridiculous amount of research. A lot of it's industry funded. So you got to take it with a grain of salt and dissect that research and know how to read it. But he had a doctor on his show that his name, I think, is Dr. Praveen, don't quote me, Praveen Arani, I believe is his name. And he's one of the big red light therapy researchers. He showed if your body temperature is slightly elevated, you lose a lot of the mitochondrial benefits of red light therapy.
Oh, no.
I know, right?
That really sucks to hear.
I mean, that's the research he did.
Yeah.
I went digging and looked at it and I was like, oh, this looks legit. It's kind of compelling. Yeah. So when I have a little, my she shed. It was my gift for myself for having a baby at 43, 44, having a wild toddler
Gotta
boy.
give yourself a good gift after that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I negotiated some affiliate discounts on a sauna and a cold plunge. And Chris from EMR Tech, that's the company I use, he gifted me with a Firehawk, which is like a mega, I think Mark Bell has one. It's a mega huge red light. It's huge. It's ridiculous. And so now if I'm going to use that thing, I do sauna, then get in my cold plunge, then do the red light therapy so I could bring my body
cold therapy and
then red light. Yeah. And it's actually pretty supportive to the mitochondria to do that as well, because when you get into the cold, you basically create more of an open environment for that red light therapy to be utilized. So, yeah.
Okay, I got to figure that out then.
Got to start buying some ice.
Yeah, I got a lot to think about. I mean, I feel mostly okay doing it. I don't know.
There's so many great benefits to infrared, though.
Right.
I mean, just being in an infrared sauna is so great for heart health and brain health and circulation and exclusion zone water. So I don't want you to think like, oh, I'm not getting any benefit, but you're probably not getting like the red light therapy benefit according to this doctor and this research, right? So this is like, take it with a grain of salt.
Right.
Look at this is what I always tell people. I'm like, look, here's a paper, here's some research. This is the conclusion I came to. It's on you now, if you're going to change something about your life and your routine, to go and look at that yourself and see, is that applicable? Like, does it apply to me? Like, does it make sense? So.
Okay. So in summary, you still condone red light therapy, but it's best to do during the day. The jury's out, I'll say, on whether red light with the sauna is good.
Yeah.
I personally feel okay doing it. So, but it's absolutely not a replacement for the sun because it's missing blue light and
UV light.
Yeah. Okay.
UV light is really crucial for the endocrine system, the brain, melanin production. I mean, it's just, there's no UV light in a red light therapy panel.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the other thing, and we touched on this a little bit, that you hear a lot from people, and I think the holistic health space in general has realized the psyop that this is, that the sun causes cancer. Let's just talk about that, the sun and cancer and skin cancer specifically.
Yeah, I mean, so I kind of alluded to this earlier. I don't think people need to go out in the sun all day long necessarily, especially if you're a Fitzpatrick 1 or 2.
You keep on bringing that up, and I've never heard this before. Tangent. We just talked about how we go on tangents all the time on the show, but the skin type thing. I've literally never heard Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
Like, what is this?
It's just basically how dark your skin is.
Okay. And like, how did it,
so there's like
what is
1,
this
2,
system?
3, 4, 5. You can just look online.
Okay.
If you Google Fitzpatrick skin type, it'll give you a chart.
Okay.
So you can kind of say, oh, I match more. I'm probably like a 2 right now, just because I am tan. Well, this is tan for me.
Got it.
I'm still very like fair
You're
skinned.
super British.
Yeah.
Although my wife, according to 23andMe, and oh my God, I'm still insane that we even did that. But before we knew,
we knew.
Right,
Same.
Yeah,
you can find out your haplotype through 23andMe.
Okay.
Yeah.
And well, so this is what's crazy, and this is presupposing that genetics is what they say it is, but assuming that that's true, my wife, who is olive skin, brown hair, brown eyed, she's 100% British and Irish.
What?
And it's like, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, we always thought, even she thought she was Italian growing up, and she's 100% British and Irish.
Wow.
It's like super shocking.
That's very strange.
Yeah, it's weird. Super weird.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So back to cancer, sunlight.
Yeah. So with the skin coloring, basically, the lighter you are, if you're Fitzpatrick 1, less time, right? You don't need that much. You don't have as much melanin. Melanin is a filter, right, for UV light. It's a protective mechanism. That's why the solar callus, again, is important to gradually build that up. When you look at the studies, when you look at the science, again, science is science, but if people want to come at you and say it's empirical, 100% true that science shows UV light causes cancer, the science is done on narrow band UV lamps. There is no red, there's no infrared, the UV doesn't change. So our natural light, when we go outside, in the morning, sunrise, blue light begins to come on the horizon. UV light comes on about 45 minutes later. If it's summertime, then we get UVB. Then UVB goes away. Then we get UVA. Then we get sunset. Then we get that near infrared red again around nightfall. So we're always shifting and changing the amount of UV, the intensity, and we've always got red and near infrared to balance and to provide mitochondrial support. So the infrared helps to build exclusion zone water, which we've talked about, which is crucial for energy in the body. Infrared also allows your body to make subcellular melatonin. I think I mentioned that earlier, which is a very powerful master antioxidant, which can actually help to offset some of the quote unquote damage from the sun. And so, yeah, if you're just going to expose someone to UV, no red and near infrared, I could see how that would be very dangerous, and if your circadian rhythms are off, so you're not getting sleep and you're not making melatonin at night, this master antioxidant we make endogenously in response to darkness, that's 5% of that is pineal gland through darkness. A lot of people aren't making that. And then, then your whole body clock is thrown off because you're not outside for sunrise. You're blasting your body with blue light. There's a lot of interesting research showing blue light in cancer.
Interesting.
Yeah, a lot. Skin exposure to blue light and cancer.
I wonder how hard it is to control. Well, I'd love to see those studies. Because I wonder if they're controlling for the non-native EMF coming from the devices. Is it just blue light that they're being exposed to in these studies?
Well, there's probably non-native EMF. I mean,
that's what I'm asking is like, I think
so it's dehydrating the body on a cellular level.
So I think being near our devices, it's the blue light and the non-native EMF, and I think both of those in combination with some other factors. I mean,
there's so many factors.
Other things, but
eating a crappy diet, we can pull the diet into the conversation. I have a little I have like 13 free guides on my website. So I do have paid courses, but I love putting out free resources. I do a free newsletter. I have a safe sun exposure guide. And in that safe sun exposure guide, I try to pull together some of the research on diet and sun exposure. And
Sunbum, first thing you put on for sure, right?
What, sun cream? No. I'm like, what is Sunbum? I don't even know what that is.
It's sad you don't even know what it is anymore.
I have no idea.
That's like maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't know what it is, but isn't that the brand that like it's the dog that's like pulling down the little girl's swimsuit? Is that Sunbum? Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, I don't
know. You're young. You don't.
I know it's like copper tone. It used to be. I know exactly what you're talking about, though. Yeah, the little girl with the dog's pulling off her swimsuit, and she's got the tan.
It was a failed joke. Never mind.
Yeah. No. And again, not medical advice. I haven't worn sunscreen in years.
I refuse. I don't even throw zinc on either.
Yeah, I don't wear zinc oxide. I wear a hat if I've reached my max, or I go into the shade. Yep. Because what I was about to say is we make subcellular melatonin in the sun, in the shade, when infrared bounces off of green trees. Russell Ryder and Scott Zimmerman did the research on that. Russell Ryder is the big melatonin researcher. He's got all the papers out there. It's interesting stuff. It's a lot of supplementation stuff, but it's still interesting of how our body makes it endogenously and understanding that as well. But, if I've reached my max, I'm going to put on a hat, or I'm going to go in the shade. I'm going to get out of the sun. I'll still go outside, but under a covered patio and get all that infrared. So the data on this is just incomplete. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say, you can go lay in the sun for 6 hours a day and it's safe, kind of like with the eyes as well, because I think what happens in the alternative health community is like somebody says something and then somebody else says something. And then you got like 50 people saying something. And then you've got the other side being like, these people are all crazy ass quacks. And I'm like, y'all do sound like crazy ass quacks. Cause like there's some nuance in this conversation that needs to be had.
Right.
So don't, and I've taken flack for saying there are some instances where you may want to protect your eyes from the sun. Like if you're going to be on a boat all day long, that's not a natural.
Especially like the glare coming off the boat.
Yes.
If the boat is white and it's a bright sunny day, that's like, it's hard to even open your eyes.
Right.
Yeah.
In that instance, I would say, I think Bon Charge has a more circadian friendly sunglasses.
Cool.
But I would take breaks from them. I would not wear them all day long, and I would cover the hell up out of my skin because the light coming in through your eyes is going to tell your body to make melanin and to make these protective filters for the sun, but it's got to have that eye signaling. So if I'm going to wear sunglasses, you better believe I'm going to cover the hell out of my skin.
Interesting.
And I'm going to take breaks to see what time of day it is, what time of year it is. I don't want to throw off my circadian rhythms by wearing sunglasses. And that supposedly, I just started working with Bon Charge, so I can't quote for sure on this, but supposedly they have a sunglass that is not going to disrupt your circadian rhythms because there's some research that shows that sunglasses can tell your body to start making melatonin, pineal melatonin in the daytime, which stops your body from making cortisol in the daytime. And we don't want that. We can make subcellular mitochondrial melatonin, but we don't want to be making pineal melatonin during the day necessarily.
So you really almost do want to limit the amount of times that you're wearing contacts even out in the sun.
Well, you can try the dailies.
Okay. Just the dailies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the article I wrote last night, because I get a lot of people that have had LASIK and they've had cataract surgery, that blocks UV. And they're like, well, what do I do? I'm screwed. I'm totally screwed. And I'm like, no, you're not, because we know this much. This is very interesting conversation that we're having here. Like, this is a lot of research. I got pregnant in my 40s. I have countless 21-day leptin reset pregnancies that have happened, successful babies. People have lost massive amounts of weight, changed their life. This is amazing, really great information. I want everyone to understand it. But you can't undo LASIK. You can't undo a cataract surgery. And we have photoreceptors all over our skin, in our ears. And going back to the conversation, we don't understand everything about how the body can adapt. And things work in the body that we don't always understand. And so I tell people, because I get these really distraught emails from people, and God bless them, I'm like, you can still heal. Right. I still want you outside. I still want you doing all the things. Maybe just pay attention to if your skin starts to feel a little bit warm, go inside. If you start to get a pinkening of the skin or it starts to just feel really hot, go inside, even if your timer hasn't gone off, right? Be a little more careful, but you can still use these things to heal. It's not, you can't undo a surgery. So I really don't like in the alternative health space how we shame people.
Right.
So much.
I have 2 screws in my shoulder. That's something that I can't really undo.
I'm not super proud of doing 2 rounds of IVF, at all. But it is what it is, and I learned from it. And hopefully I can talk to other people who've been in that situation and help them, especially going through the feelings of like hopelessness that if you do something like that and it doesn't work. I wish I didn't give medical procedure to my daughter 16 years ago. Her whole life would have been different, but I can't sit here and grieve over that, and I can't change it. So here we are.
I think there's, on the back end of traumatic situations like that, they can be used as a positive in 2 ways. One, to teach you so that you can then teach other people and alert other people and show other people through experience what not to do. But also on the back end of those experiences, you can show, hey, here are the things that we now do or that I've done. Like, here's what I do with my shoulder now, or here's what I do after IVF. And it sort of pushes you into other solutions if you allow it to, so that you can then be a voice for other people to show them solutions after that traumatic experience. And then they can turn to you like, wow, I've also gone through this traumatic thing. What is this person doing on the back end of it? They seem to be doing a lot better. So now they can turn to you so that you can help them.
Right. Right. I think I'm really big into Dolores Cannon right now. I've been like listening to her on repeat, and I just feel like we are here to learn. Like, there's so much that I don't understand, and I probably may not understand, and that's okay. But there's always a lesson in what's happening, what's going on. And you either learn the lesson or you're going to repeat that. And that's why people sometimes can be mean and nasty to you behind the scenes when you're out there putting stuff out online. Podcast. I'm sure you get it.
Oh
you
my
get the
God.
mean.
I get this the most because I was in the Army, that I'm secretly, people say he's secretly a CIA agent that's working to mislead the health freedom.
Just snort on that one.
It's like, that's the one that I get the most. I'm like, dude, if you saw my day-to-day life, you would be like, never mind. Nope.
Right.
Like my 2 kids, no way.
I know, right? Like Dr. Sarah coming to live with me, she's just like, people have no freaking clue what your life is like with a very challenged autistic daughter and a wild toddler boy. And then you're running these groups and like putting out these courses and like free ebooks all the time and trying to help people. Right. And then they come and attack. Unfortunately, on the way here, I had to send a cease and desist letter to somebody who was defaming me on Instagram.
Oh,
I'm
my
like,
goodness.
But why though? Because normally I'm like, whatever, troll, goodbye. But he brought my daughter into it. And so that was like,
that's not cool.
Now there's an attorney involved.
Yeah, that's not cool.
And there's a letter being sent because you got to draw a boundary. But just going back to the whole lesson thing, I'm like, okay, that energy is done. It is over. But this person is not learning a lesson of some sort. Right. And they're going to put hate and they're going to put that out into the world. That's going to poison them. It's not going to poison me. And Absolutely. I'm not going to allow that. I was like, I deal with it. It's over. I'm cleanse my field and try to continue to put out information to help people. There's always a lesson in everything. And like I said, there's some lessons I may not learn in this lifetime. And I'm okay with that. But I've learned so many things from these like twisted health journeys, from doing something that trusting the doctors. My daughter almost died last August and was in the ICU, and we trusted the doctors. And there was a point where I was like, we have to get her out of here. They're going to kill her. Like, she has to get out of this hospital. I don't care. And yeah, you learn. You see what's going on. You learn,
This brings up an important question as someone who's been through some traumatic experiences. One, this is a 2-part question. One, how much of an impact do you think emotional health plays into our biology and how it expresses in terms of actual physical or mental symptoms? And then 2, how do you approach that in terms of healing and coming back to homeostasis?
Like so much of our health is the emotional state and the trauma, the big T, the little t. And I'm not a trauma healer, somatic practitioner. I have my friend Irene Lyon, she's really big into the nervous system.
I'm supposed to interview Irene sometime soon. So yeah.
Is she going to come out here? Are you going to?
I think so. I hope so. Well,
send
maybe
her to Georgia. I'm going to convince her. I've been friends with her since 2020. She got me while I was still in carnivore, and we talk on WhatsApp all the time. I love her so much. But I did, when I was going through all the miscarriages and when I was going through the IVF, because IVF is a serious medical trauma. You're injecting yourself twice a day with medications. You're getting a very invasive ultrasound and blood work every other day.
Oh my goodness.
And then after you do that for 2 weeks, you go in for a surgery where they put you under, and then you wait to see, do we get babies? Do we not get babies? And
you're already typically emotionally traumatized too.
Injecting yourself with hormones, and then like you've already lost babies.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're already very emotionally invested in the situation. And so like, Irene helped me, I did her work and she's a friend. Like, we haven't crossed the boundaries of like, Irene, help me, like her work, doing her work and the things that she teaches really got me through a lot of that, I think.
Do you typically refer out to her?
I do tell people that. But Carrie and I have talked about this a lot on our podcast, that doing this stuff with quantum and circadian biology, grounding, being out in nature, being in tune with your light dark cycles is very regulating for your nervous system. Giving yourself the appropriate food and nourishment is very regulating for your nervous system. So it really goes very well together.
It's so interesting you say that, because as I was preparing for this episode, I was thinking in my head about how animals, when they're living in nature, if they go through a traumatic experience, right?
Oh yeah, Irene talks about this.
Yeah, you see them shake off, right?
Yeah.
And then they just go about the rest of their day as if it never happened. And I don't know. That's
well, they don't go back. They don't go back to the other animals and say,
right. And then they start shaking, and then they're all traumatizing each other. And they don't do that.
They just go back to the herd.
Right. Exactly. And so my thoughts were, as it relates to humans, and I was thinking about all the things that you do, getting us back to what we should be doing naturally.
Yes.
It's even crazy on the back end of this, thinking that like getting sunlight, putting your bare feet on the earth, like that is worth doing a podcast episode about. And it's not just innate to human beings.
That's what I'm saying, right? That's the emails I get. I'm like, but why is this confusing?
Right. No, it's like literally, it should be, it's obvious. And I think to us it is now. But anyway, I was thinking about all that, and I'm like, thinking about that contrasted with German New Medicine, which...
I just had Brandon on the podcast last week. Yeah.
He's another person that lives in Austin. Yeah. That's a good friend of mine. Anyway, so I was thinking about that, and I'm like, well, just like you said, if you're doing these things to reconnect with nature, that's naturally good for your nervous system health. Probably makes it so when you have traumatic experiences, you can resolve those conflicts much quicker.
Yes.
So it's like they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, they do. Well, and I've tested that. Irene, like I said, a dear friend of mine, my daughter started really having health issues over the last year. And I know that there's a huge emotional component to that. Mm-hmm. We moved. I had a new baby. She was the only child for 16 years. Her two favorite teachers at her school left. She's already non-speaking. That's a very traumatic experience to not be able to speak. And two of her caregivers left. And I think the new caregiver was unfortunately abusive to her. She can spell to communicate. And she spelled to us that the new teacher had locked her in a room and was mean to her and yelled at her. So I immediately got her, away from that teacher. But that happened. And then we had the baby, and then we moved. And then my daughter's health went crazy, started having grand mal seizures, started having these violent rage attacks to where I had to leave the house with the baby and stay in hotels. Oh my goodness. I mean, it was literally terrifying. So I'm like calling Irene. I'm like, so I'm just like doing this like stuff and like feeling all of this, but like, I don't how do I get through? She's like, you're doing it, you're feeling it. You're not stuffing it down. When I was mad about it and angry about it, I allowed myself to feel that and go through that, and now, thank God, we're hopefully coming to the other side of it. And I'm in better shape and look better than I did before I got pregnant and even in my 20s. And so I truly believe, and I didn't do any rituals or it wasn't complicated. It was, yeah, I'm still outside at sunrise every day grounding. I'm still, even the things are crazy. I would literally go lay in the ground. I know my neighbors think I'm nuts because I do sunbathe naked in my backyard.
I'm laughing because I do Qigong as the sun's rising in the morning in my front yard. And I'm sure all my neighbors are like, what the, because I'm like doing these movements and breathing and the sun's coming up and I have my shirt off. And they're like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? I love it though too.
We have like a really private backyard now, but the house we were in before this one, the sun was coming up in our front yard. So I was out there like literally sitting on the grass in my pajamas with my little breakfast, and people were like walking their dog, and it was up on a hill. So people are like walking their dogs like, what the hell is this middle-aged woman doing on her lawn? Like drinking my special water. I'm like,
I love that so much.
Now our backyard faces east and I got a private area, but yeah, that's laying on the ground. Oh my gosh. Like, again, it's going to sound woo. It's going to sound crazy, but do you want to go spend thousands of dollars on like these therapies? And like I did talk therapy, we all have traumas. We all have stuff like in our lives. And I've tried to deal with that stuff through talk therapy, through multiple psychiatric medications, through alcohol abuse, through, I've got 8 years sober now from alcohol. And it's like,
amazing.
I tried so many different ways to medicate myself. And it's like doing the somatic stuff, like just being in my body, going through the experience and continuing to connect with light and dark cycles, grounding, drinking water, nourishing my body in that way. And I say like little intentions and prayers over all my water that I drink.
So important.
My husband's like, she's talking to the water again. And I'll like cover
just show him some Gerald Pollack and Gilbert Ling and Veda Austin. Be like, what are you talking about, dude? This is legit.
I try. Yeah. Like if he's like in one of his like moods and he's talking, I'm like, I'll cover my water when he walks in the room. If he's like bitching about something, program my water, I'm like, you take that in the other room, please. Don't be around my water with that. And I know it's completely insane, but like this stuff, like it works.
It does. It absolutely does. I love that so much. You should do like a skit on that. That's hilarious.
Oh my gosh, we could. We so could.
Yeah. I don't even know what we started with. What did I ask?
We were talking about the sun and Cancer. I know we're talking about that.
So I know we've talked about red light quite a bit and how the sun obviously exposes you to the full spectrum that you need. And would you say that it's best to expose yourself to sunlight first thing in the morning? I know you agree with that, but also at night, is it good to
if you have time in your schedule? I mean, I a lot of times can't, because my kids are doing bath time, bedtime, dinner.
But the morning time is most important.
Morning time is sacred. Sure. And if they get up early, if they're for whatever reason waking up before the crack of dawn, I just bring them outside with me. I'm like, y'all can sit outside. I don't care. Like,
love it.
Yeah. So I think the morning is the priority.
Okay.
And then the blue blockers after sunset, blocking the blue light at night is crucial, and it's very overlooked. Very overlooked, an easy health hack.
Just stop the blue light after sunset, right?
And I started off just like, I'm going to watch all my TV and I watched, I did not sleep great last night because I stayed up watching House of Dragons. I still have some guilty pleasures.
Is it good?
It's good. I think it's good.
Because we did watch Game of Thrones and we were upset with how it ended. But
I was very upset with, and I've been rewatching it a little bit too, just on the days I don't have dragons. But I try to limit myself to 1 to 2 nights of TV per week. Like that's it. And I cut it off, except for the nights that Dragons comes out, which there's one more episode left this season. But, I used to, when I first started this, I would watch TV every night and be on my phone every night. But all I did was put on blue blockers, and I immediately saw a difference. Just by putting on blue blockers? Just by putting on the blue blockers. Started wearing some red raw optics, and boom, right away. The other thing is I started becoming more sensitive to light. I've always been really averse to like really bright lights. And I didn't really understand why. It would kind of just make me feel nauseous if I had to go to so I just mentioned I had 8 years sober. So if I go to recovery meetings for whatever reason, it's like coffee, donuts, and like huge ass blinking fluorescent lights. Like let's all... not the best environment to heal in. No. So like I have to wear my yellow blue blockers when I go to those meetings, if I go, like, because I literally get sick. I have to wear the yellow ones in Target now. But as I started wearing the red blue blockers, that's when at night during the day, I started to just be like, oh God, what, I started to just get this visceral feeling. And it was also the morning sunlight too, of like giving my eyes the right signaling and the right wavelengths. And my body was like, oh. And the other thing is that I was trying to say before I went on like 16 tangents is I started noticing when I hit 40 that I couldn't read things across the room. I was like, oh man, I'm like this. My parents both got glasses when they turned 40. And and I'm 45 now. I'm not wearing glasses. Haven't had to get any.
No contacts either?
No contacts either.
Good for you.
Yep.
That's awesome.
What did I do? I started wearing yellow blue blockers religiously if I was watching TV or if I was in a Target or Kroger or whatever. Now
so even if you're doing what I'm doing right here with my notes, you would have them
that
on
would
just
be red.
For this would I need to get the red. I have it on my phone. I have the red.
I would turn it red.
I need to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I have a little podcasting studio and it's like for blue light, like everywhere.
Yeah.
So what I do in those situations is like I'll record for an hour or two and then I'd go do tons of outdoor time.
Yeah.
Because
that's what I try to do as well.
Yeah, just do tons of outdoor time, tons of grounding, and don't expose myself to it at night. And I'm not recording every single day.
Right.
The problem is that people are going to work at their 9 to 5 and they're under these bright fluorescent lights. They've got the monitor, they've got the Bluetooth everywhere, Bluetooth headset, Bluetooth mouse. It's really, really hard on your body. Mm-hmm. It's very dehydrating to the body and is very disruptive to the circadian system as well. And you're basically like you make cortisol in response to how much blue light is available. And the blue light in most indoor lighting is telling your body that is noon in the middle of June, no less, because noon in December is going to be much different than noon in June. The UV index is going to be much lower, Kelvin's less. And so you're pretty much putting your body in this environment where it's summer 365 days a year.
Not good.
No, it's not good.
That's how you become a crazy Swede.
Yeah. Yes.
So, but blue light isn't all bad. We've already sort of covered that. It's just that prolonged exposure to blue light by itself. And again, I think in the overwhelming majority of cases, I would say virtually all cases with human beings, we're being exposed to blue light while also being exposed to non-native EMFs associated with the blue light on those devices too. Yep. So you're getting a double whammy there.
Yeah. And that, again, this is Dr. Cruz's research. When your eyes are getting this blue light, it makes a harmful form of retinol, which blocks cytochrome 4 in the mitochondrial electron transport chain. So it stops water production in the mitochondria.
Wow.
So not only are you getting, if you're around a high non-native EMF blue lit environment, you are losing cellular water. We know that from Dr. Gerald Pollack's work, like 15 to 20% of your exclusion zone water is being dehydrated. You don't have any infrared, so you're not making any exclusion zone water to help offset that. And you are also in this environment where your mitochondria can't operate efficiently and you can't make water. So we make water at step 4, this deuterium depleted water, which becomes exclusion zone water. But yeah, there's so much. I mean, the more I learn about health, the more I look at the water, the more fascinated I am by the water, because we make it and we're supposed to hold on to it.
Right.
And our modern lives are not supportive of that process at all. And if we don't have enough melatonin, we don't have those master antioxidants and the mitochondria begin to dysfunction. The cell loses voltage. You have cancer. I
interviewed Brian Sanders, who he goes by Food Lies on Instagram, and he was talking to me about his time with the Hadza people in Africa. And one thing that he noticed about them is that they rarely drank water, which is pretty crazy given the conditions coming from our vantage point. We would assume that they're having, out in Africa in the sun all the time, having to drink a ton of water.
Yeah.
And I thought about it for quite some time, and I'm convinced now that we have to drink so much water in modernity
we're losing it all the
because
time.
We're losing it so much, right? And our bodies aren't efficiently producing its own water as it should be in our cells, right? According to Gerald Pollack and Gilbert Ling's work. So because of that, we're having to drink more water than we typically should. Whereas if we're living as close to natural as possible in nature, our body's creating its own exclusion zone water properly, and we're not having to drink as much.
Right. And it was Ling that basically said the energy currency of the body is this water the mitochondria makes. And that's where it's at, more so than ATP. And more of the polymaths and quantum biologists and some of the most brilliant people that I talk to are starting to say, I think that's right.
Yeah, I don't even know if ATP is really as big of a consideration as we think it is.
I don't think it's as big as we think it is, honestly. I really think the water is so much more important. I mean, totally what did I do last night before Dragons? I was making water for my family because I've got this hydrogen machine that you can make hydrogen water. So I was doing the minerals, distilled water.
What machine do you have?
I have a Holy Hydrogen. That's what we started with. And we had amazing results just with the Holy Hydrogen for my daughter. But I just got a new machine called the Axiom H2.
Okay.
It's 6 times more powerful.
Wow.
The flow rate for inhalation is 6 times more powerful than the holy hydrogen.
Wow,
So I was
okay.
seeing such good results with my daughter and the holy hydrogen that I'm like, okay. I talked to Dr. Tyler LeBaron, who's the head of the Molecular Hydrogen Institute, and he connected me with Matteo, who owns
Got it.
Axiom. And I just had Matteo on. I know people are going to be like, I can't afford that. Why would you talk about that? Well, again, for us, it was like $40,000 a month medical treatments or a machine. And so that's where we went to. But yeah, I was making all this water for my family for when I was gone. And the Axiom actually holds the hydrogen in the water for up to 2 weeks. And that's yesterday I was like testing it. I'm like, did it go down? Did it go down? Because usually when you make hydrogen water, it's gone. The gas is gone within about 20 minutes. The holy hydrogen kept the gas in the water for about 6 hours. And then I went to bed. And this morning it was at 0. The Axiom water was still at the high ppm.
What is it about the Axiom that makes
it's just the technology of the electrode, the way that it makes the water.
Is the water more structured in that case maybe? And then that's how it's able to retain some of the hydrogen?
I don't know. I have to ask Matteo about that. Okay. I just had him on, but he was telling me I should put the, cause it's like an electrode. So you can put headphones on it and that gets to the brain faster. We've been doing that for my daughter when she says she feels
like ear insufflation?
No, it's like actual headphones.
Whoa.
And it feels trippy because it's like air rushing into your ears, but it's hydrogen rushing into your ears.
Got it.
It's the quickest way to get it to the brain.
Got it.
And they have goggles. You can put them over your eyes.
Yeah, because I have the AquaCure brown gas. I do the inhalation. We
do the inhalation. Yeah. But yeah, and then it's got a little attachment that you stick down into the water and it makes water.
That's cool.
And it makes it, and I was using the tester because it comes with the tester, which I think is cool because a lot of things will say they do stuff and they don't. But and then I test the holy hydrogen, so it's a good machine. Anybody listening, it's still
I'll throw it in the show notes.
It's a still great machine, but the Axiom is like, I'm obsessed with it. But he was saying to put it into my cold plunge because the skin absorbs the hydrogen water really fast, and heat can get rid of the hydrogen, but if you're in cold water, it holds the hydrogen really well.
Wow.
So I'm like,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So with blue light.
Back to blue light.
Yeah, I know. It's okay.
Hydrogen's great though to help offset radiation. I'm sure you've had George on that he's talked about that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So we weren't totally off, but
we weren't. We were still in the realm of blue light. We were only like one topic away. But with blue light, so your approach is simply, if you're going to be on screens at all, either turn the red light function on the screens, which is pretty easy to do on an iPhone. I don't know about Androids. I'm assuming it is as well.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
But if not that, where your
yellows.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's what I was going to say like 30 minutes ago. Once I started doing this consistently with my eyes and wearing the yellow, all of a sudden I could read across the room again. It took about 3 months and my vision improved.
I've had a lot of people share with me, and this has happened to me as well, is that through COVID, and this could be a function of stress, it could be a combination of all that their eyesight has also gotten way worse.
Well, look at the research. I think it's out of China mostly with myopia in children. Because it's huge, because these kids are glued to their screens. And all these kids are suffering with myopia. And how they offset that is making them go outside and see natural light, right?
Yeah, it's so simple.
Yeah, but there's a ton of data showing blue light and myopia because it just essentially destroys the retina. And so, yeah, my husband now, that's how I got him to wear blue blockers, because he's like, can you read this? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, put on your freaking blue blockers.
Right.
He's like, okay, finally, like you have to get your eyesight to start going before you implement it. But
I don't know if I've heard you talk about this or someone else, but it's not only that we're like becoming addicted to scrolling because the algorithms and just like mindlessly obsessed with screens, like reaching in our pocket to like the phantom sounds, thinking our phone's going off when it's just a subconscious excuse to have our phones in front of us again. But I've heard someone say, and it might be you, that there's also indications that we're quite literally just addicted to blue light itself because of the it causes our body to produce more adrenaline, dopamine, and cortisol.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people are blue light toxic as well. And Carrie and I both see this in our private communities. People come in, they're like, I just did red light therapy and I want to throw up. And this is the worst thing I've ever done.
So they're like withdrawing from blue light.
They can't handle the blue light. And they're like way sensitive to sunlight. They can't stay out in the sunlight for more than a minute before they start breaking out in rashes, hives. Like,
would you say that that's a indication of detoxing though? Like maybe because
we think maybe more exclusion zone water.
Okay.
And yeah, because exclusion zone, it excludes by nature toxins that might be
exactly
right. So possibly, but we're just like in nervous system dysregulation as well. But I wasn't seeing a lot of that, but the last year or so, we're seeing a ton of it, and it's blue light toxicity. You can't go outside without sunglasses on. Like, and I used to be guilty of this. It'd be like an overcast day, and I'd be like, "Oh God, it's so bright out here." And it's like, no, you're blue light toxic. You know,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. And the other thing about blue light is lux. Like we need a certain, and you've probably heard of 10,000 lux light boxes. I don't like those.
I don't.
Never heard of that. Huberman's talked about those being an okay substitute for morning sunlight.
Okay. Is that like a box that you put in your home?
Yeah, it's just a light box for
Does
people
it have the
who
full spectrum?
No.
Okay, so then it's
like,
not a replacement for the sun.
It's like a bunch of blue light, but it's at 10,000 lux.
Okay.
Because in here we got all these bright lights.
Yeah.
And I have my new app that I'm playing with. It's got a little lux reader, and so I've been playing around with like lux here, lux there. Max lux indoors is around 500. For depression, for anxiety, for metabolism, we need 1,000 to 2,000 lux per hour in order for these specific functions in the brain to work properly. And so it's bright, but it's dim in certain regards. It's giving the brain really confusing information. And so on top of the blue light that's telling our body to make cortisol, people are also getting depressed. They're getting anxiety. They're having appetite, metabolism issues because the lux is too low. And you can't fix that with a 10,000 lux light box because that can like really dysregulate your circadian rhythms as well.
Is there any beneficial use to them that you see or no?
I don't, I do have some people in these extreme northern latitudes where it's like dark, like Alaska, like they have in the wintertime is dark for like a few days with no sun.
What if you did that box the same time as
a red light therapy? It's just still so bright. Like if I was going to do it, I would, and I know some people are going to be like, oh, Sarah, don't ever even say to do it. Just like, don't ever even say sunglasses. But like, we have to speak with nuance.
Right.
If I was going to do it, I would try to do it like, around the time of like UVA, and I would do it with a red light therapy panel, and I would do it just a short amount of time. I don't know.
See, it sounds like you're just jumping through endless hoops to just avoid literally going into the sun in the morning.
Just do that,
just go outside.
But if there's no sunlight available, I understand how people can get really depressed and gloomy.
When you say no sunlight, you're talking about like winter months.
Winter
and
months,
climates.
Yeah, really dark months. I mean, I just tend to do more red light therapy during winter and more sauna and more cold plunging and more grounding because I think Deanna Minich is her name. She has done some research talking about essentially like vitamin D or hormone D being the dominant hormone that we need to be storing and making in the summer, and melatonin is the dominant hormone of the winter. That our hormones, our gut microbiome, thyroid, it all shifts seasonally in response to light and temperature. So and our microbiome shifts throughout the day. So all this stuff about microbiome, gut health, thyroid health, you can't separate this information from it because we are light beings. We are all impacted by these changes. And so, yeah, it's just such a nuanced conversation. And I know people ask about tanning beds and light box.
What are your thoughts on tanning beds?
Just like,
so I've heard of people using that as a replacement for if they're in a harsh winter climates.
Yeah. And I've seen people do that and feel like so much better. And I used to do that actually, like way back in the day when I was in my 20s and I thought tanning beds were like, okay.
Here's the thing though, were you using the toxic stuff that you put on your skin before going into tanning beds, like the typical like sunscreen?
No,
Oh, just tanning beds by
just
itself?
tanning bed. I would just go in the tanning bed on my lunch break because I felt so depressed in the wintertime. And I was like, I would just go in there a couple minutes at a time because there was a tanning bed like place next to my office. I worked a 9 to 5 and I would go in there and I was like, oh my God, I feel so much better when I do that. But you got to be careful with that because most people doing that, their circadian rhythms are poor. They are indoors, so they're not again, we go back to the same stuff. Poor body clock, not enough melatonin production endogenously, whether it be mitochondrial or pineal, overexposure to blue light. I mean, poor diet. So I'm just the tanning bed stuff. I'm like, and there's no red and near infrared. So I did when I was pregnant with my son, because I was getting jammed from my husband, like, you got to take vitamin D, you're pregnant. And because he's worked in gynecology in the lab business. My husband's in the lab business. He has been for the last 16 years. He's a regional sales manager. So we butt heads a lot because I'm just like, you don't need to test that. That's stupid. And he's like, yeah, this is like my business, so we butt heads in that regard.
You're like speaking out against his business, essentially.
Yeah. Well, he works for them. It's a company, so it's not his.
Right. Yeah, I get what
my
you're
goal
saying,
is to help him to like start his own thing and like get, away from this company.
That's the way to go. That is the way to go.
Yeah, that's the goal. But when I was pregnant with my son, he was really like, you got to keep your vitamin D up. So I did use a Sparity vitamin D lamp in conjunction with my EMR Tech red light therapy panel. And I would do 5. I built up to it because you can burn the hell out of yourself with these lamps. And it's a slow burn. So you do it and then you don't feel the burn until that night. And then your skin bubbles up and it's very ugly.
Oh, God.
It's very painful. So you got to build your tolerance up to these lamps. They're very powerful. So what I did do when I was pregnant was I would do 5 minutes front, 5 minutes back, 5 minutes front of the legs, 5 minutes back of the legs. And I'd rotate the red light therapy panel with it. But I was also blocking blue light at night and I was outside at sunrise and I was eating a very healthy diet with not a lot of seed oils, lots of DHA rich seafood. I was eating salmon roe my whole pregnancy, spoonfuls of that. And my vitamin D levels were able to stay at a 60 my whole pregnancy without any supplementation. Do I need to do that? It was the winter time. I don't know. But just to say that is what I did. I'm not saying that's what anyone else should do, but it was a little experiment that I did. So.
Another thing related to sunlight that I forgot to ask is we're talking about exposing ourselves to the sun, but it's still important, even if it's overcast, like even if you can barely see the sun at all, to just get outside, right? It's still benefits
the
related
lux
to that.
factor is huge. So that's why I love my lux meter, is that I can see even
Can't
when
wait for your app. That's
I'm
going to be
excited
huge.
for it. Yeah. I can see it's like still 5,000, 6,000. It was like 9,000 lux the other morning. And I was like, but it's so nasty and gray. So you're getting that brightness, but you're also getting tons of infrared and red. And so you're still making subcellular melatonin. You're still getting lux and you can still get a little bit of UV through the clouds as well. So you get what you need from that on those days. I know it kind of stinks. I live in Georgia, so we have kind of rainy times of year. The winter can be really dark and rainy. That's, again, why I kind of follow my red light panel during that time. But
Makes
I'm
sense.
still outside in the morning first.
Okay, so we've touched on everything related to light, circadian biology, and I want to get into diet. But before that, because you've mentioned it a number of times, and I want to preface this by saying I am typically turned off when I hear quantum because it's become such a buzzword. And especially when we're talking about quantum physics, I tend to think, and this is me personally, that a lot of things that quantum physics are attributing to this like sort of theoretical world of physics can be explained really well if you reincorporate ether into the conversation. And so like anything quantum related, typically as it relates to that side of things on physics, I always go back to, no, we don't need to go there on like the theoretical stuff, just bring back ether into the conversation. But I think when it comes to health, it's a totally different animal, I'd imagine. So just, I guess, what is quantum biology?
Yeah, I mean, it is. So Dr. Catherine Clinton, you mentioned her. She's got a lot of great, interesting stuff out there right now about it. So does Carrie, my friend, Dr. Sarah Pugh. All of us talk about it a little bit differently. I like to keep it as very simple as possible. And it's essentially something very small that has a big effect in your body, like the quantum effect of sunlight. You get a little bit of sunlight, it does something really big to your body. When you are outside and UV light hits your skin, it excites the electrons in the body. And so that gives you more free energy. And so essentially it's like how these electrons are working in the body when you look at exclusion zone water and you look at things like drinking structured water and some of the research the Analemma guys have done, that this water can actually help to donate electrons to the electron transport chain, and that it's really just looking at how our body operates on this kind of quantum level. We can also look
on
at
like a macro level, essentially, like how things in the micro impact the macro.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And then
so maybe we could call it like holofractal biology too, or something like that.
Okay. And your biofield, the ether, it matters.
Right.
People think you can just be a dick and it doesn't impact you and you get away with it.
Right.
It's not on me. It's not my responsibility to correct that for somebody else, but yeah.
Their biofield sucks though.
Yeah, it does. I don't want to be around it.
Have you interviewed Eileen?
No, I don't think I have. Oh, I want to though. Yeah. And all the stuff she does with sound. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Because if you're talking about the biofield, Eileen McCusick is
I need to get her on. Yeah.
I got you. I'll hook you up with that. Okay, so I want to talk about diet now. And I want to emphasize again, I love that you approach leptin sensitivity and just health in general from a lens of, yes, diet is a factor. It is important. You can have some positive effects by just approaching diet temporarily in most cases, because you need to look at all these other things first, especially in modernity. Especially for those of you who are watching this on a screen. I hope you have your blue light glasses on.
Your screen's
if you're listening to this, I hope you don't have AirPods in. So all these other things to consider first before approaching diet. And it's actually right in line with this course that Dr. Edith Ubuntu Chan and I taught together, based on her book and her work called Super Wellness, where before we even considered diet, we knocked out basically all the things that you're talking about here, which I think is so important. And again, if you want to check out Sarah's courses and things like this, please head to the show notes. So, okay, with all that being said, we've now set the stage for diet itself. So how do you approach diet yourself? And then how do you approach diet with your clients? Because I'd imagine there's a lot of variation.
Yeah. I just spent half my weekend re-recording a lot of the diet modules in my course because there's people that come from all backgrounds. And so I love it if someone comes to me from a standard American diet background. That's the easiest, where you're eating multiple times a day, you're eating processed foods, packaged foods, probably not eating enough protein. The protein sources that you're eating are poor. Like, I love that because I could just be like, you don't even have to change that much. Let's start with the light stuff. So everybody gets the light stuff down. But food is a form of light. And that's the way I try to explain it, is like, it's information about the time of day and the time of year. And we could fight about this, vegan versus carnivore or whatever, but like, you're still informing your body of the time of day, the time of year, the season, all of that. And so your food has this information that you want to give to your body. And so bioavailable protein, I look at ruminant animals, and I also recommend seafood, DHA-rich seafood. I recommend Dr. Michael Crawford for people who are worried about mercury. And I ate salmon roe through my whole pregnancy, just like the salmon eggs, just took a spoonful of that. Or you can eat trout roe, just a spoonful of that. But that also helps with your body's electric capacity as well. And we have a lot of DHA in our eye, and guess what gets destroyed with blue light. DHA and vitamin A both get destroyed by blue light. And so we've got to rebuild that. We've got to make sure we're getting enough DHA rich seafood. So if someone was coming to me from the standard American diet, the first thing I would say is get rid of all the packaged processed foods. Let's calculate your protein based on your desired body weight. Now, my formula, there's variance here, and this is not medical advice, but I like to take body weight in kilograms, desired body weight in kilograms, and multiply that by 1.5, and then have that over the day. Starting place. Men probably need more. Pregnancy, breastfeeding probably need more. Lots of muscle, probably need more. But the average, more sedentary person, that's going to be plenty of protein. They're definitely 99% of the time not eating that much. And so we start there, and I look at protein sources, again, meat, eggs, wild seafood. That's the base. And then we're going to play with carbs and fat. If someone's coming from standard American diet, I don't need to give them like, eat 20% of this and 30%. I'm just like, eat what's growing right now. You got watermelon? Okay. Have some, have some of that. Have your protein, then have a little bit of carb. Like, I don't even have to put them keto. I don't have to put them low carb. I don't have to put them carnivore, because they're just going to do that. I had a woman in my group that started it in February, and she lost 40 pounds by May.
Wow.
And she didn't do keto or carnivore or low carb. She just ate local seasonal food, got adequate bioavailable protein. We want to get you to 3 meals a day. So sometimes we do have to bridge that period a little bit, because people have blood sugar issues. So we have to get them a little bit more fat adapted so they could go time between meals. And yeah, you look at what's local and what's seasonal and try to stick to that. In the winter time, people stick to more cellar stable root vegetables, fermented foods, things like that, stews. And it's similar. So that's where usually I start people, but you got to eat the breakfast, because it's so crucial for leptin signaling. And
what about people who say, and I've struggled with this before, I'm not hungry in the morning?
Yeah, it's but there could be a leptin issue. Your leptin levels, if you tested them, if you went out and you said, I'm not hungry, and you went and got a fasted leptin test, your levels might be too high in the morning, which means either leptin didn't dock to the brain last night because there was some blue light disruption that prevented that from happening. So leptin is spiking at the wrong time. Could also mean you ate something too late last night. Could also mean stress on the liver, gallbladder. There's a lot of stuff, but when it comes to leptin resistance, typically if you're not hungry in the morning, it's a sign that there is a hormone issue. Your cortisol is too high. All kinds of stuff. And so I start people with sunlight. If they're like, I feel so nauseous in the morning, I'm like, okay, let's just not even stress about it. Go outside, sit outside in the morning. And then maybe next week you have a hard-boiled egg or 2 hard-boiled eggs. And there's this whole thing on social media right now. 2 eggs is not enough for breakfast, ladies. You're doing it wrong. And like, it's this whole, it's a whole thing. Yeah, it's a whole thing. And I'm like, look, if she hasn't eaten breakfast for 10 years and now she's eating 2 eggs and she's sitting outside doing it, I'm happy about it. Right. I would not be happy with 2 eggs. I need like 4, 5, or 6, like
okay.
I eat a big breakfast.
What do you eat in the morning typically?
I typically eat breakfast sausage. I've got a local farm that delivers to my house, which is beautiful. I just placed a big order today.
That's
and it'll
awesome.
Be at my house on Friday. And they make breakfast sausage. And
what kind of meat is it?
It's usually turkey. We do a little bit of chicken. Sometimes they do beef. They mix a bunch of meats.
You're eating locally and
seasonally. Local and seasonally. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it doesn't have sugar added to it. Sage. Yeah, and I just eat that in the morning. I'll put that in a bowl, go outside and eat. And that's a non-negotiable though, is really, and you don't have to start there, but breakfast is that non-negotiable. Of doing that every day and getting enough protein and fat in the morning to stabilize your blood sugar.
So I do have a lot of people who listen to this podcast who are vegan, who are certain that that is the way. And I want to preface this by saying, I do acknowledge that there are some people who have been vegan for 20 to 30 years and are able to remain healthy. But I also can't discount the countless stories that I've heard, just like your own, and several of my friends who were vegan for quite some time, and then their health started to deteriorate. And what they're met with is what, you see a lot is people who are still vegan saying, oh, you just didn't do veganism right. And I'm talking people who are eating raw, eating like a full spectrum of fruits and vegetables, incorporating
soaking
legumes,
everything.
Soaking, like doing all the things that are correct. And it still is that their health started to deteriorate. So I'd love to just get your thoughts on veganism in general. And do you think that people can be healthy in the long term being vegan?
Like, where do you live?
I think that's an important question to ask too.
It's, you live in Costa Rica, like where you got all this stuff growing, you're outside. We're really only supposed to get like 1/3 of our energy from food. If you look at some of the research by Dr. Alexander Wunsch and how light impacts the body and gives us this free energy, looking at exclusion zone water, looking at melanin, and the work of Arturo Herrera. I always say that. I always have such a word vomit with that one. He's the big melanin researcher and shows how melanin creates free energy in the body as well. So, okay, do you live in the tropics? You might be able to do okay on a vegan diet, but my issue is like the person in Canada who's not connected to the earth, not connected to the sun. They're not getting any free energy from grounding, from sunlight. It's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard. And then there are...
Especially if you're eating locally and seasonally.
Yeah, if you're going to try to eat locally and seasonally, what are you going to eat at that time of year?
Right.
So I try to really just take the emotionality out of the diet wars at this point, because I know I used to get vegans don't really come for me anymore. I get vegans like being inquisitive. I had one this morning. Can I do your program vegan? And I was like, well, it's going to be really hard.
Right.
You can come and just do the lifestyle and do all the light protocols, and I think you're going to feel a lot better. But I'm not going to tell you to buy my program and look for vegan meal plans because there aren't any. So I would be honest about that.
Saying something because you were vegan too.
Yeah.
How long were you vegan?
2 years.
2 years. Okay.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and I know people who are vegan for 10 years. And one thing that is interesting though, good friend of mine, Aaron Abke, he was vegan for some time. His health started to get worse. He then started eating animal-based. His health started to get a lot better, but then he just sort of had an epiphany one day that it is just not morally justifiable for him to consume any flesh. And I've had all the conversations, and I myself have wrestled with this quite a bit, because we do know that plants have consciousness and plants have feelings, but at the same time, there's something unique about flesh and blood. But there's a lot there. There's a lot to be said there, and that could be a whole 5-part series. But what he does is follow what he calls the Essene diet, and that is eating basically vegetarian. So he does eat a lot of eggs and drinks a lot of raw milk. And he's feeling pretty good. And he's been doing this for, I want to say, a little over 6 months now. And he's a really big built guy that works out quite a bit. So,
and that was what I told the person this morning. I said, are you willing to eat eggs? And she was like, no. I said, well, because I have some people in my group right now that live in India. And, that's very high vegetarian population. Yeah. And I don't know how it's kind of cool. My work is reaching all the way over into India.
That is really cool.
But they have been doing it with eggs and a little bit of seafood, and they're having great improvements. So
it's not that you need to eat ruminants and
well, I mean, you just get, it's so much more bioavailable to get nutrients, minerals, building blocks.
I think Aaron would agree with that too. Actually, he'll say that straight up, that it is much easier.
Yeah, it's much easier.
Red meat.
Yeah. So, I have a lot less emotionality around the whole thing though, because I'm just like, just look at it from that viewpoint.
What was that principle again?
What?
The principle that your yoga
ahimsa.
Ahimsa.
Yeah.
Can't discount yourself in ahimsa.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Right. And the whole blood type thing is interesting. Sometimes I'm like, it's all BS, but I am a type O.
Same.
I'm O negative, so I'm also an alien, apparently. If you look at some of the research.
I'm also O negative. Right.
Yeah.
But it's also that I have heard several other people who have O blood types that they do much better when they're eating a lot of red meat.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
and I do.
There may
I
be a
feel
little
so much
something to
better.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, with respect to diet, we were talking about eating protein in the morning. Why is it so important to eat protein and fat first thing in the morning?
Yeah. Well, number one, to signal leptin. Very important for leptin signaling. When you look at the research on leptin and diet, it is across the board that a low protein diet causes leptin resistance or is heavily correlated with leptin resistance. So are the omega, the seed oils, the highly inflammatory seed oils. Those are also very heavily correlated with leptin resistance. And so, protein's important to reverse leptin resistance. And I like bioavailable animal products because there's also some interesting research that lectins can bind to that leptin receptor in the brain and prevent that communication between the stored energy on the body and the brain as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So we got to look at brain inflammation. What is causing your body to have an inflammatory response? Some people might have an inflammatory response to dairy. I tell people, if you've got a lot of weight to lose, let's just pull the dairy out for now.
I've heard someone say, I hear so many. You're so good at remembering names of people who said things. I'm not. Someone said to me that it's important to eat meat, but avoid eating fat, especially because fat is what stores toxins in the body.
Yeah, I've heard that.
So what are your thoughts? Because it's also, there's a concept, and I tend to agree with this, that fat is important for brain health.
It's very important.
And consuming fat would then mean you're making your brain healthier. So where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I mean, there might be a thread of truth to that. I try to get grass-fed, local,
right. If you're
high
eating
quality,
grass-fed,
then that's not going to be as much of an issue or an issue at all, arguably. So I do recommend people do that, but I want to meet people where they are.
Right.
If you tell someone, hey, tomorrow you have to go outside for sunrise and then you have to eat like a giant grass-fed, grass-finished steak outside barefoot at 6 a.m. and raw, and then block blue light at night and not watch TV and go to bed early, they're going to be like, I'm not doing this. Stupid, So like meet people where they are. If it's 2 eggs or if it's just going outside, like that we can build on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then I've heard you talk about this concept too of metabolic flexibility. So do you think there's a period that necessitates you being pretty strict on the way that you eat so that you can eventually have metabolic flexibility?
It depends on your background.
Okay.
So because I was so heavily immersed in the carnivore community, and there's so many lovely people in that community, but there's a lot of people that are doing that diet and they get very low leptin. And that was the issue I had. I had low leptin and extra 30 pounds. So I was able to lose 30 pounds once I reversed it. So I get a lot of keto carnivore fasting people that have very low leptin and excess weight. So that's going to be a different dietary strategy because their body is not able to really burn glucose for fuel very well. It's less of an issue though than somebody that's been eating a standard American diet and they can't burn fat for fuel at all. Right. Way less of an issue, easier to fix someone that's been keto carnivore low carb than it is someone that's been only burning sugar for fuel for 20, 30 years.
So it's easier to fix someone that's keto carnivore.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense.
Because they're already good at burning fat for fuel. And so we just have to slowly push. That's what I had to do. I had to slowly get carb tolerant again and able to burn glucose and then get back into ketosis. But the people that are eating the standard American diet, they can't go into ketosis. A lot of them, they get hangry. I always tell people, I'm like, it's okay to be hungry. If you're trying to lose weight, you can be hungry, but I don't want you to be hangry. And hangry is like an emotional state where, like there's a whole joke about it, but that just basically means your blood sugar is dysregulated and you can't tap into your body's own fat stores to utilize as energy. So we have to help them get to that point where they can go 4 to 5 hours between a meal, where they don't need a bedtime snack in order to sleep through the night. Because I'll get people like, if I don't have my dates and honey and raw milk before bed, I'm not going to sleep. I'm like, guess what's going to happen also? Your insulin's going to be up and you're not going to get leptin signaling. So maybe you're knocked out, but like you're leptin resistant by the fact that you have to have a snack to go to sleep and stay asleep. That's a sign of leptin resistance.
My kids are like, we cannot get them to freaking go to bed unless they have a snack. I don't.
Kids are different though. Like if the kids are lean, they're
both lean.
Yeah. Kids are so much more insulin sensitive and leptin sensitive than we are, because my daughter was a little bit like that. She's almost 17. So she does a little bit of fasting. We don't even make her do it. She just kind of intuitively does it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we tested her A1C, her leptin, all that stuff. And she's like rock star numbers, So kids are a little bit different. I'm concerned about the kids that are pre-diabetic. I'm really concerned about the kids that are trying to go get weight loss surgeries and being given weight loss drugs because they're so obese now.
What do you think about Ozempic?
I think it's too early for us to know what it's going to do.
I'm so sketched out by it.
Yeah, Dr. Tina is a good friend of mine, and she's been talking about it and going on a lot of podcasts about it. And she's really gone into the research on microdosing it. But still, even microdosing, I see black box warning for thyroid cancers and stomach paralysis, even at a microdose. And so I'm just like
there's better ways is my
can we
whole
just
point.
do this stuff? I know it's harder to do this stuff that I'm talking about, because if it was easy, everyone would do it and I wouldn't be sitting here. We wouldn't be having this conversation.
Is it really that hard though? It's just that we've been conditioned so much.
You have to unlearn a lot of stuff. To me, it's not hard. This is easy.
This sounds incredibly easy.
Yeah.
Like it's not, it requires consistency and maybe that's the hard part. I don't know.
it
Maybe it's
does
hard
require consistency. And I tell my community, I'm like, consistency over perfection, always. And don't let perfect be the enemy of good. You screw up, get back on track the next meal. And I follow now that I am where I'm at, like more of a 90-10, 80-10 kind of or 80-20 kind of a rule. Because I don't eat local seasonal 100% of the time.
You call that being metabolically flexible then, right?
I can go to what used to happen when I was leptin resistant is that I would have a piece of birthday cake at a party and I would feel like crap the entire next day and bloated, puffy, just retaining water, feel like crap. And like, God, I just gained all this weight from this stupid piece of cake. I shouldn't have even eaten it. And then I'd have the food cravings. Like one piece of cake would trigger me to have craving for cake for days on end. And I'd be puffy, bloated. That's why carnivore was so awesome, because I just took that off the table for years. And I was like, I don't even have to deal with this junk. I'm at a party, like I'm just not going to eat it. It doesn't even register as food. Now that I'm very leptin sensitive, and I didn't go crazy when I was pregnant with my son, but I gained some weight. I've lost 40 pounds since I had my son. So obviously I gained weight while I was pregnant, and I don't feel bad about that. But now that I've gotten to where I'm at, I've been able to maintain this weight since it took me about a year to lose the weight because I was breastfeeding, and I'm one of those women that breastfeeds and does not lose weight. It just sticks to me. But it took me about a year to lose that 40 pounds. And I just did the stuff that we're talking about here. Nothing magic, no supplements that are crazy, no potions, no wild. And I didn't even really cold plunge maybe like 3 or 4 times. Even though I have a plunge, I just was like, I'm breastfeeding, I'm stressed out, I'm not sleeping, I'm not doing this stupid thing, just like not doing it. So I was able to lose all that weight. And I struggled with my weight my whole life. I was 100 pounds overweight in high school. I had a really traumatic.
That's crazy. I could never picture.
Oh, I was like the fat kid in high school.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And then when I got pregnant with my daughter, I got up to 235 pounds. I've lost 100 pounds 3 times in my life. And then even after I lost that 100 pounds after I had my daughter, that was the last time I lost 100 pounds. I was like, I'm never doing this again. I used Weight Watchers. It was the hard way. So I'm never doing this again, but I still struggled with like 20, 30 extra pounds. And then that like eating the cake and eating something and just feeling puffy and bloated. And so what being leptin sensitive for me now is, and following these things and being very consistent, is I can go to the birthday party and I can have food that is not local and seasonal. We'll just leave it at that. And I actually wake up leaner the next day. A lot of the time I'm like, how did I get abs from barbecue and ice cream cake? Like, that's not normal.
How does your digestion feel with that stuff?
It works so much better.
That's incredible. So your detox pathways are all just great. Your body's doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
Right, because when your circadian rhythms are on point, your body detoxes. We're supposed to detox at certain times of the night, and it can be that simple for some people. Some people, they might need to work a little harder because they've loaded their bodies with cleaning products and makeup. But I wear a little bit of mascara. I really don't wear a ton of makeup. I don't like it. Mm-hmm. This is like very dressed up for me.
What's sad is this is dressed up for me right now.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's important to eat in first thing in the morning, mm-hmm. or just sometime around first thing in the morning, just after getting up, and eat a lot of protein and fat in order to come into leptin sensitivity. But again, handling all the other things first, that's most important. Mm-hmm. But how late do you recommend, what's the latest time in the evening that people should be eating?
I mean, the earlier the better, really. And it's seasonal as well. So I think last night I ate dinner at like 6:30.
Okay.
I was up till probably 10 watching the TV show. But yeah, I mean, 3 hours, 4 hours if you can. Wintertime, I try to eat a little bit earlier. Wintertime, I do a little bit more fasting, and sometimes I'll do 2 meals a day instead of 3, just because there's less light available. There's less food available. So winter is more fasting, sleep, less food. But you got to work up to it, because if I'm going to fast, I'm always going to skip the dinner. I'm never going to skip the breakfast. So I do a little bit of fasting, but it's always dinner skipping. And you got to build up to it.
Why is that? Why dinner skipping instead of breakfast?
Because
so many people in the
that's
holistic health space would recommend intermittent fasting by skipping breakfast, eating your first meal at around 12, 1 or 2.
Well, they all talk about autophagy and apoptosis.
Yeah.
You can't do those without melatonin. Like, we're going to have the best autophagy and apoptosis when we're sleeping. And so why not stretch that out, cut your eating window off at like noon, or even just like do a breakfast to breakfast fast? You're going to get max autophagy and apoptosis. And your adrenals, when you skip breakfast, and this takes a while to happen for some people. It depends on your stress load and your stress bucket, because I got away with it for years before it really started messing with me and my hormones. But in the morning, cortisol is going up. It's supposed to rise. And if you don't stabilize your blood sugar, or if you just rush off into stress land like so many of us do, your adrenals have to come in and save the day. And that can create a cortisol issue over time. And cortisol, just the curve gets all screwed up. So it's much better to start your day, stabilize your blood sugar. And most of us already have stressful lives, too much blue light, too much non-native EMF anyway. So everyone's like, eat like a caveman. I'm like, can we just stop with that? Like, to an extent, like, yes, local seasonal diet,
right,
animal-based, good stuff. But the way that we live our lives is just so different than the caveman, Yeah.
I kind of want to be a caveman, though.
Yeah. It would be kind of fun.
Yeah. My favorite movie is Legends of the Fall. And I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but Tristan, his character, I grew up fantasizing about being him, like super primal. I don't know.
I love it.
It's weird. My wife thinks I'm so weird. But you brought up an important thing that I also wanted to cover. It's actually what I had to cover next, was fasting in general. Mm-hmm. So you brought up, 24-hour fast. Mm-hmm. Like, there's nothing wrong with doing that. I recorded an entire episode, and I've talked about it frequently, my personal experience with doing extended fasts. Mm-hmm. And the longest I've done is a 15-day water fast. And I personally felt incredible doing that. And my digestion totally reset.
Oh, yeah.
Went through a lot of emotional up and downs, sort of had to sit and just face myself, which was incredible. It was a total spiritual experience. Felt more connected to God than I had ever felt in my entire life. But I had a lot of women reach out to me and pretty pissed off about sharing my experience extended fasting, saying that it's not healthy for women to do extended fast unless they're dealing with something like stage 3, stage 4 cancer, MS, or something like this. So what's your just general thoughts on fasting?
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be nuance with it. And how full is your stress bucket? How nourished is your body? Do you have adequate minerals and nutrients on board to start with? Do you have some sort of cancer or metabolic issue that you're trying to attack very quickly? The longest water fast I did was 7 days, and that's when I was carnivore, and that wrecked me.
Did you feel like you had hormone issues afterwards?
Yeah, I did.
This is the thing that comes up for a lot of women, is that they say it just did not, it wrecked their hormones.
I gained weight. First of all, I lost like 15 pounds during the fast, which I was like, wow, this is amazing. But then I lost a lot of muscle during the fast as well. And so when I gained weight from my body kind of bouncing back, it was like pure fat.
Oh,
you know?
wow.
Yeah, which is not, you don't really want to do that.
Right.
And I didn't go crazy with the eating. I was still carnivore. This was in the middle of my carnivore days. It was July of 2019. I did it with a few carnivore friends. We all did it together, which is fun. It's always fun to fast with friends and bond and all that stuff. But like,
makes it easier too.
Yeah, it makes it way easier.
Yeah.
And I had a friend of mine with lipedema. It was really painful issues with lipedema. So that's why she was doing it. And it did help her a lot. But yeah, I felt great. And then I struggled for months on end after that, just months on end, and lost my period, of course. Like, oh, where did that go? You know?
That doesn't sound too healthy. Then.
No.
Yeah. See, and this is where I think that maybe for women who are of childbearing age,
be careful.
Be careful. And maybe, again, this is not health advice. If I were a woman, I would only typically fast if I was dealing with some crazy health challenge.
Right. And I did fast a little bit. So when I was trying to get pregnant with my son, I was working with this wackadoodle functional medicine doctor and being told to do 72-hour fasts to improve my mitochondrial health, which I understand. So I did some of those, and it was not helpful at all for my mitochondrial health or my hormones. Not helpful at all. But my point is, I didn't do irreparable damage, because I think what happens a lot in the health space is that women are like, oh my gosh, I just messed up my hormones so bad, I can't fix it now. And it's been like this for 5 years now. And I'm like, I did those fasts, I think in August, got pregnant that following January. And then I lost 30 pounds, like still even after that stupid fasting stuff. So there's a mental component as well. If you're like telling yourself that you messed yourself up and it's damaged and
Totally.
and I talk with my group members a lot, because they will freak out about something. My husband turned on the overhead lights and that, and I'm like,
my health is wrecked.
I'm like, but it's going to be okay though, because your body's not that stupid. Like, we underestimate the brilliance of our bodies all the time because we get so stuck in protocols and health, like overlearning. Like, it can be very toxic. So you have to draw the line and not take some of this stuff in.
100%. And that's what I love about your work. And I think why I love this conversation so much is because while I recognize that there are some incredible gadgets and biohacking devices and things like this out there, you brought up the hydrogen machine that you use. I use my Brown's gas machine. I use the biocharger. I use a few other things sometimes, my sauna space sauna. But because the holistic health space is exploding in growth and so many people are interested, and there's these influencers like you and I popping up everywhere saying like, hey, this is the only way to do it. Hey, you should try this. Hey, this, that.
Here's my 5-step protocol.
5-step protocol. Like, these supplements you have to take. If you're not, you're not getting enough of that mineral or whatever it is. Like, so much information out there. And what you do and what Carrie does and some of the other people in this space and Dr. Tom Cowan is like, screw all that. Let's come back to what's simple.
Right.
Like, come back to just exposing yourself to nature and these very simple, overwhelmingly free things that you can do for your health. That's so important.
Yeah. And the thing is, if you still want to go down that path of the testing and the supplements and all of that, this not going to change what you're doing to give yourself a good foundation. So one doesn't like negate the other necessarily. Yeah. And supplements are a whole other conversation, but
What are your thoughts on them in general?
I don't really like them very much. I like minerals. I'm obsessed with minerals and learning about minerals. And I think we all need a little bit of mineral help. And
What about like magnesium supplements?
Love magnesium.
Okay.
Yeah. Dr. Carolyn Dean was just on my show. I really like her.
Yeah.
She's sent me a bunch of magnesium, and my husband's been like drinking the hydrogen water with a couple drops of magnesium. And he's just like, I feel amazing.
Mm-hmm.
What is this? This is crazy. Like, I think that we're all magnesium deficient.
Yeah.
And it can be helpful to add that back in. But a lot of, Dr. Laszlo Boros is the father of deuterium and that whole conversation. And I think a lot of supplements are very high in deuterium. They're not regulated. And the problem is that people use the supplements to avoid changing their lifestyle. And
100% agree with that.
If you want to use them, cool, but don't think that they're going to fix the root cause. You got to change the basics first.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. That's kind of my take on supplements too. And like I take BioOptimizer's magnesium supplements.
They've got a good one.
Yeah, they have an incredible.
And I do digestive enzymes occasionally because when I'm doing my 80-20 and I'm like, oh, I did like 25-30. Let me take some enzymes, clean this mess up, and then I'm go on with my life. Yeah.
Sarah, thank you so much. This has been such an awesome conversation, like I already said. I think as a final question, all the things that we're talking about here are things that you've learned experientially. Like this is how you've come into vibrant health. And how old are you again? I know you're
45.
45.
Yeah.
Okay. And you look like you're my age. And that's how this happens, by getting back to these natural principles. But you also talked about how you've had over 4,000 people complete your programs. And I hesitate to even call it a program because you do tailor it unique to the individual, but it is just like a general, hey, here are these things to reset your circadian biology and come back into leptin sensitivity for optimal health. So if you could just share some of the testimonies that are top of mind for you that stick out to give the audience a little bit of an indication of how well this works.
Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, I have so many 21-day leptin reset babies now. There's a lady in my group right now who's did the program when it first came out in 2022 and got pregnant. And now she's pregnant again. And this is after multiple miscarriages and being told, you're never going to do this without IVF. She found me and started doing this work. And now she's about to have her second baby.
Incredible.
Which is amazing. She came back and rejoined my community. And I've got so many women getting pregnant, getting their cycles back, re-regulated, lots of weight loss. I mean, weight loss is like, after a while, you're like, that's cool, but like, I want to see something more than just weight loss. But tons of weight loss. Lots of people that were just chronic emotional eaters, just really controlled by food, no longer feeling that way. I've got a lot of ladies with Hashimoto's that have come in.
So I was going to ask about the like autoimmune side of things.
Tons of Hashimoto's that have been able to get their antibodies down below 100. Some of them completely in remission. Lots of women off of thyroid meds, which is amazing. Gosh, there's just so many amazing stories of, and I have men too. It's not just women. The majority of my people that are women, but I do have some men also that have come through, and they usually are like in and out. They're like, all right, I did this. I got my results. Bye. Too
many chicks in here. I don't really relate. I'm going to go somewhere else.
We don't need to talk about moon cycles.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah. But a lot of women with like debilitating cramps. And that's something I used to deal with, debilitating cramps and just like heavy bleeding and just horrible hormone issues. Gone. Now regular 28-day painless cycle, which when you're going through that, you just are like, this is just how it is. It's just how my body is. Because that was me for years and years. And now I have regular painless 28-day cycles at age 45. So
that's incredible.
Yeah. It's very possible. And I don't know what happened to my mother, what my mother would have done in menopause, because she got cancer and went through that early. So I have no idea what I'm quote unquote supposed to be doing, but this feels like the right thing.
Feel good.
Yeah,
right? Okay.
exactly. Yeah. The last one is that I think of right now is that she is a school teacher and lives in the north, where it's very cold, I think Chicago, and had crippling anxiety and insomnia, teaches kids, lives up north, and did the program. And we biohacked a little bit. Again, there's that word, but we engineered, optimized,
right.
fixed things so that she could be strategic around these principles. And now anytime someone new's in the group, she's like, in there, like encouraging them. And I'm like, I remember when you were in here just losing your mind, freaking out. And I'm like, whew, okay, this is a tough one. But I've seen that just like crippling anxiety and insomnia just gone. And
incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's so cool. That's got to be so rewarding.
It is.
Seeing all these,
It is. I was a little thrown off on my way here because, like I said, I got that harassment on Instagram, and I had to unfortunately send out a letter, a cease and desist. And my husband was texting me. He's like, "Don't let this throw you off for the interview. Go back and read your testimonials. Go through your emails and read some of those emails from those people, and read those before you go on. And just remember those people that you helped, and don't screw this guy that's just being a dumbass,
Right.
And that's what I try to do. And it's helped me a lot over the last year with my daughter and her health not being great, is just like, seeing all these other people doing really well. It does really make your life special. It does. Yeah.
Well, you crushed this interview, so
Aww.
I think you did a good job preparing your
Thank
mind.
you.
I would have never known that you had any issues right before. This was such an awesome conversation, especially because we touched on so many topics that I am a huge advocate for too. So this was amazing. And of course, if you want to look at Sarah's courses and everything like that, you can just check out the show notes, follow Sarah on Instagram and all of her other channels. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. This was an awesome conversation.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.